Part 56. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 563. It was 3 o'clock in the morning. When people were most sleepy, the rebels came out of the secret exits of the underground tunnels with various weapons. They did not gather together, but went directly to the direction of the presidential palace in a relatively scattered formation. And before that, the rebels also sent out a pioneer reconnaissance team, whose mission was to find and remove the enemy's secret sentries. The rebels who survived until now were no longer ordinary civilians. This kind of task of sending secret sentries without sufficient intelligence support will inevitably lead to accidents, not because of their technical problems. But no matter what, as long as the secret sentries fired, the subsequent reserve reconnaissance team could carry out precise attacks and avenge their sacrificed brothers. Birykova was the first to receive the news of the rebels attacking the secret sentries. Because the reconnaissance team was small, she thought it was another ordinary harassment operation by the rebels, so she could only let the guards around the presidential palace be vigilant. But soon the sudden roar of gunfire told her that she had misunderstood the other party's intentions. The armored vehicles guarding the defense line were first targeted and destroyed by the rebels' rocket launchers. The soldiers holding Mosin-Nagant rifles in the rebel army are the best shooters. They are responsible for killing the government soldiers who are in chaos. The enemy's formation is in chaos now. Should we take this opportunity? The captain in charge of the feint attack interrupted the deputy captain's suggestion and said, "These people are just recruits who were forcibly conscripted. They are used to confuse us. These recruits are miserable, but there is no mercy in war. But those armored vehicles have. They are not short of money. There are tanks on standby behind the defense line. Come according to the plan." This news was told to Buddy by Leon, who had been to the presidential palace. Yes, the deputy captain immediately notified the people below to ensure that they would not rush for success. President Birykova, who was sitting firmly in the presidential office, soon received the news that the rebels were attacking from the back door of the presidential palace. "Have you found any biological and chemical weapons?" Birykova confirmed this as soon as she heard the report. "No. Take a picture before President Adam replied to her. Birykova also began to prepare for the next step. As long as we take a picture of the battle that shows the rebels did not use biological weapons, we can use it to refute the video evidence that the other party threw out that the rebels used biological weapons. What about the rebels' attack?" Birykova explained to her secretary, "The rebels' most powerful fighting force is biological weapons, but they did not use them. So what do you think these biological weapons are going to do?" "Yes. I know." President Birykova waited for the secretary to leave before picking up the phone on the table and dialing the channel. "How many soldiers are there?" "Send 2/3 of them. These soldiers are naturally biological soldiers." Buddy was waiting for the opportunity with the liquor, but Birykova did not reveal any flaws to him. The captain of the feint team contacted him and asked, "We have contacted the guards. The other side is much better equipped than us. Our snipers are at a disadvantage. Take advantage of retreating now and attacking from another angle." Buddy answered calmly, "I will destroy the substation and cut off the power supply to the presidential palace. Although it will affect the fighting of the rebels, it will be more conducive to the raid of their own liquors." "Got it." The feint team expressed their thoughts. "By the way, since the enemy is retreating, we might as well find a few trucks now, load them with explosives and hit the enemy's defense line." "Okay, you can contact the base directly for help." The rebels did not go out in full force, and there were still some logistics personnel left at the base. Buddy had contacted Leon and others with the walkie-talkie before. At this time, he was with Leon and others. After confirming his next move, he said something to JD and others and left with the liquors. The power of biological weapons is too terrifying. Alex watched him leave from the window, and couldn't help but sigh at Buddy's control of so many liquors. A person without any training can control such a large number of monsters. What will happen if this situation is magnified to more people? Just thinking about it makes him shudder. The power suddenly went out in the president's office, but the lights came back on after a minute or two. The backup power supply of the presidential palace was turned on. Atrik Birykova, who was working ignoring the sound of gunfire, raised her head, smiled contemptuously, said to herself, and continued to work hard. A short power outage may not be a problem with the substation. In addition, the substation over there was attacked and there was no response, so she naturally did not find the problem. Taking advantage of this short power outage, the rebel army at the back door had evacuated, leaving only a few sniper teams to fight wits and courage with the enemy and attract the enemy's attention. The enemy changed the direction of attack. President Birykova in the office heard the gunfire change direction and quickly asked the Minister of Defense. Yes, but like before, they only launched an attack, not a charge. You let the people guarding the key facilities go back to defend and encircle the insurgents attacking the presidential palace. Birykova thought for a while and issued an order. She now suspected that the rebels were not just a small fight this time, and the enemy was not so persistent before. As soon as the government troops at the key facilities moved, the rebel soldiers disguised as civilians monitoring the periphery immediately reported the situation. Batty kept confirming the situation and began to lead the Lickers to fight to besiege the point and attack the reinforcements. So that's the idea. After President Birykova received the news that the reinforcements were ambushed, she said, "The rebels don't have so many people to watch and ambush every group of people, so let the returning troops take another way." She not only saw that the other party wanted to besiege the point and attack the reinforcements, but also knew that the rebels would not stop when they saw the good. The purpose of besieging the point and attacking the reinforcements was not only to consume their own manpower, but also to isolate the presidential palace and then capture or kill themselves. President Birykova continued to issue orders, "Let our special forces replace those useless recruits." The rebels changed direction, but the guards did not move their defensive positions accordingly, so they had to consume bullets to attack the recruits again, and then face the guards who were waiting for them. This special soldier does not refer to the special forces, but is a nickname for the biochemical forces. After they came up from underground, they have been on standby around the presidential palace. President Birykova stood up and looked at the map of the capital hanging up, assessing the seriousness of the situation in her mind. Suddenly, she returned to the table and made a phone call. "Is the tyrant adjusted? I need it to be ready for battle at any time." Report, someone broke in and said directly, "It's a big deal. The rebels took our armored vehicles and used self-destruct trucks. The eastern defense line was directly penetrated." President Birykova knew that she was a step late in changing guards, and the other side took the lead. Coincidentally, the answer from her researcher came from the microphone. "3 can be put into use. Let one of them go to cabin number 6 and get ready." This is a device that sends the tyrant directly to the eastern defense line. Then Birykova said to the people who broke in, "Let our tanks go out to resist the enemy's attack. For those in other directions, only the people on the positions will be left, and all the reserve troops will go to support. They can't outlast us. The only 4 tanks in the whole city are in the hands of her guards." Yes, the man rushed out again. "Buddy, we have broken through the outer defense line. The defense circle of the presidential palace has also loosened. The armored vehicles snatched by the ambush team can be used." Buddy felt that his whole body was hot, but his brain was still working. "The enemy has tanks, you guys pay attention and be ready to retreat at any time." He didn't give the order to charge, but since the other party had already done it, he had no reason to pour cold water on him now. He could only remind the other party to pay attention. "We are almost able to break into the presidential palace. Is it time to launch a general attack?" The casualties of the feint attack team were only a few hundred people, which made the captain think of rushing into the presidential palace in one go. Have the enemy's biochemical weapons appeared? They have appeared, but I found that those monsters are difficult to kill. Once the distance is far, the shooting skills are not good. No wonder that which only uses biochemical monsters in the battle in the sewer. The captain of the feint attack explained the situation. It's okay for close combat, but when the distance is far, the hit rate of biochemical soldiers drops a lot. In short, it is not suitable for the current situation, otherwise Birykova would not have to recruit strong men. Wait for me to come over. You send a rocket team to the south first, and let them prepare smoke bombs to cover our liquors to launch a charge. There was a small forest on the south side of the presidential palace, but the trees had long been flattened and trenches were dug. With the cover of smoke bombs, the liquors can rush into the trenches without any difficulty. Got it. The captain of the feint attack was happy. He knew that the other party had agreed to his plan, so he had to concentrate the strongest forces of the rebels. It seems that the rebels are in a good situation now. Shenmei listened to the words coming from JD's intercom and commented. But President Birykova obviously didn't use all her strength, or fell into the rebels' trap. Alex felt that the situation was not clear enough. The rebels lack stamina, and the current advantage could be overturned at any time. But now is Parker's chance to act, Ada. Leon said to Ada, who was resting on the side. Ada, as a bridge for intelligence exchange between the rebels and Parker, said, I just notified you. For her, staying here without having to go to the battlefield in person is also a good thing. Parker, who was prepared early, received Ada's signal and immediately led people into the sewer and moved towards the presidential palace. There is an enemy position about 20 meters ahead of the corner. One of the team members held a curved gun, confirmed the situation at the corner through the screen on the gun, and said more information: 4 people, protected by sandbags but not high, and guarded by a heavy machine gun. Parker nodded and said, Mario, take out the yo-yo and give them a welcome gift. Yo-yo is a nickname. The official name of this weapon is the remote-controlled rolling mine. The hole is spherical and about the size of a tennis ball. The outer layer is a roller system that allows the rolling mine to move 360 degrees, and even some not so high steps can be jumped over by shrapnel. The inner layer is high explosives and power systems, and the power is not much different from defensive grenades. In addition, there are reconnaissance rolling mines and flash rolling mines equipped with wireless cameras, etc. Mario nodded. He took out a rolling mine, started it and put it directly on the ground, and then opened the panel on his arm. The remote control Rolling Thunder had already matched the portable computer of the arm, and it would directly enter the remote control screen as long as it was started. Soon, the remote control Rolling Thunder began to move forward, turned the corner and rushed straight to the target. What is that? One of the government soldiers looked at the 2 light circles approaching him quickly, turned on the searchlight and shone it over. Me too. Before the man finished speaking, the remote control Rolling Thunder had already rushed in front of them and jumped up, jumping into the crowd. Boom, Uncle Mario dubbed it himself and detonated the remote control Rolling Thunder. Let's go. Parker had no time to respond to his funny teammates and immediately launched a charge. Report, there is an enemy attack in the sewer, but it doesn't seem to be the rebels. Let the guards withdraw, block the entrance and exit of the sewer with cement piers, and there is no need to guard the basement, just blow it up directly. President Birykova sent troops to guard the sewer under the presidential palace just to deceive people. Including the drawings left in the construction bureau, they were all specially prepared by her. It was originally just a trap to lure the rebels to die. Of course, this does not mean that there is nothing else underground, it is just hidden very deep. Parker and his team used all kinds of new equipment to overcome all difficulties and soon found that the enemy began to retreat, leaving a bunch of unattended defense points. Finally, they found the entrance to the basement of the presidential palace, but were turned away. Is the enemy so decisive? Mario said silently as he looked at the entrance to the basement blocked by rubble. In fact, they were mentally prepared. After all, the explosion was so loud. Anyway, let's check here first. Parker did not leave immediately, but was ready to confirm whether there were any hidden rooms in this underground area. He also brought a wall detector and a lot of wall blasting gadgets, so he needed to find a place that was easier to break. The battle on the ground has entered a white-hot stage. The government troops returning from various key facilities were basically delayed, and some of them were dealt with by the Lickers led by Buddy. According to their temporary decision, Buddy controlled the Lickers to enter the trenches under the cover of smoke bombs and fight with the government soldiers, including those biochemical soldiers. As Buddy predicted, in close combat, those biochemical soldiers were no match for his Lickers. After Buddy dealt with the enemies on his side, he did not directly raid the presidential palace, as Birykova's elite were still inside. Moreover, he arranged guards around the presidential palace to ensure that Birykova could not escape, so he decided to support his teammates first. The government army's tanks posed a great threat to the rebels' armored vehicles and had destroyed most of the armored vehicles that the rebels had seized. The armored vehicles controlled by the rebels did not have anti-tank missiles installed on them. Using the small short guns on them to hit the tanks was like tickling the enemy, so when Buddy supported them, the enemy's tanks were unscathed. But these tanks were somewhat helpless against the Lickers. In the end, the rebels successfully destroyed all the tanks with individual anti-tank weapons under the cover of the Lickers to interfere with the tank sites. The rebels were not without losses. The guards were all elite. Although it was not as bad as a few against hundreds like in the movie, it also brought enough trouble to the rebels. While the rebels were dealing with the tanks, the enemies also fired desperately, knocking down many rebel soldiers. But no matter what, the rebels are now only a wall away from the presidential palace. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 564. President Birykova is a Special Forces instructor, not a battlefield commander, and commanding large-scale operations is not her specialty. The government forces are still at a disadvantage despite the rebels' deliberate actions. So Birykova did not hesitate at all in the face of an unfavorable situation. For safety reasons, she decided to evacuate directly to a safe place, and then use the communication equipment there to call for government forces in other areas to come to rescue. She first asked the new recruits and more biochemical soldiers who had been withdrawn to replace her precious guards. Then she took the guards and her secretary through the disguised underground elevator all the way to the secret biochemical weapons factory hidden more than 70 meters underground. As for the idiots like the Minister of Defense, she put them all on the ground to continue commanding the battle. This place, like the underground safe house in the White House, is her last fortress. There is enough food and water for her and her men to support until the arrival of reinforcements. Since President Birykova took office, she began to build the secret base and biochemical weapons research factory that belongs to her. It was just that she had not been able to buy biological weapons or biological viruses, otherwise the rebels would have been wiped out by her long ago. On the other hand, the news of the destruction of the tank made President Birykova change her previous plan to send out the tyrant. In the open ground in front of the presidential palace, even if 3 tyrants were sent out at the same time, they would only be blown to pieces by the rebels' guns and artillery. She instead dropped the tyrant into the presidential palace, preparing to give a surprise to the rebels who were about to attack the presidential palace. The remaining 2 adjusted tyrants were naturally responsible for protecting themselves and stayed in the secret factory. At this time, the defense minister and other senior officials abandoned by Birykova were staying in the temporary command center transformed from the conference room to command the battle. The defense minister knew that his previous poor performance made President Birykova dissatisfied with him, and he had already thought of changing people. But the other party still left him one last chance. As long as he could use the troops at hand to block the enemy's attack, his position would be stable. Since the rebels' biological weapons have already appeared and the president has given him all the command power, There is no need for him to hesitate. He directly piled all the troops on hand on the front of the enemy's attack without saying a word. This defense minister, who has always been called a fool, has hit the mark by accident this time. There are still soldiers in two directions around the presidential palace who have not moved. They are numerous and accidentally surrounded the rebels after returning to defend. Buddy has immediately asked the Lickers to intercept the enemy in two directions so that his companions can hide in the bunker in time. Damn it! Fight with them. The presidential palace is right in front of them, and the dawn of victory makes the captain of the feint team and his men red-eyed. They are extremely eager for victory and did not choose to avoid the enemy's initial etch. They shouted slogans and immediately ignored the enemy's bullets and fired back after hiding in the bunker. One of the rockets fired at the wall of the presidential palace, blowing up the wall and blowing up the soldiers hiding behind it, but now, except for the Lickers, other rebel soldiers cannot break into it. The enemy was outnumbered by himself and the rebels were stuck in a position where they were neither up nor down, like entering the enemy's pocket formation and being attacked from three sides. "Calm down," Buddy shouted, but now everyone was so angry that they couldn't calm down at all. He had no choice but to constantly command the Lickers to attack the surrounding enemies in order to protect more companions to the maximum extent. Even the new recruits of the government army were now angry. After the guns in their hands were empty, they rushed directly to the nearest enemy without hesitation. However, before he could roar, the Licker rushed over and gave the opponent a claw, strangling his roar in his throat. Before the Licker could change his target in time, he was drowned by the storm of bullets again. The battle was very fierce, and all strategies were meaningless at this stage. This battle would only stop when one side fell completely. The number of people on both sides was getting smaller and smaller, and in the end, the rebels won the battle outside the presidential palace. The garrison of the presidential palace was also wiped out, but this did not mean that they had ended the battle. "How many people do we have left?" Betty was hiding in a bunker surrounded by sandbags, panting. The captain of the feint team had died, and the deputy captain came to report the situation to him and said, "There are only about 50 people with combat effectiveness, and there are hundreds of wounded." This number was much less than Batty's psychological expectation. "You take the wounded and retreat, and leave the rest to me." "How can this be?" the deputy captain exclaimed. "We have no way out now." He blamed himself in his heart. If he and the captain had not fought, perhaps the casualties would be lower. Batty looked at the other party and confirmed the will in the other party's eyes. "In this case, you defend the position here, and the support of the government army will come soon." The rebels successfully completed the task of delaying time by ambush the government army from various key facilities, but this was their limit, so he received news that many surviving government troops were coming to the presidential palace. Buddy continued, "Do you have the confidence to complete the mission?" The deputy captain gritted his teeth and said, "I guarantee to complete the mission." "Okay." Buddy stood up on his knees, patted the other party's shoulder, and picked up the AK assault rifle leaning against the sandbag. Then he told the other party about JD and BSAT, and asked them to notify them after they had dealt with the enemy. After doing this, he led the Lickers to the presidential palace to capture the president. As long as the president was captured, he could threaten the other party to order the government army to stop the attack. Buddy entered the presidential palace. He did not know the topographic structure of the presidential palace, and only knew the approximate location of the presidential office from Leon. But Birykova would not be stupid enough to wait for him in the office, so Buddy had already asked the Lickers in his hand to search separately before coming in. Suddenly, a Licker lost contact. Buddy heard from Ada that Birykova was a special forces instructor, and thought he had met the target, so he sent 2 more Lickers over, but soon lost contact again. This time, he did not send monsters over, but personally took the weapon and ordered 4 Lickers to guard him. As a result, he did not see Birykova, but encountered the tyrant that Birykova specially prepared for the rebels. The corpses lying on the ground beside him were the lickers who had lost contact before. Buddy looked at the other party's pale face and unusual height, and knew that this was probably another biological weapon or trump card of Birykova. So he shot without saying a word, but the bullet could not penetrate the thick protective clothing on the other party. The tyrant ignored Buddy's attack and charged. Damn, Buddy turned around and ran. The two lickers used their three-dimensional mobility to go around the ceiling behind the tyrant. Their long tongues directly wrapped around the tyrant's right leg, trying to trip him. The tyrant completely ignored it and let his right foot land smoothly, then lifted his left foot. As Buddy ran away, he contacted people outside and said, "Do we have any rockets? Do we have any armored vehicles? We have rockets. We have armored vehicles, but we have no bullets. We don't know where the bullets are, and we can't replenish them for a while." When the deputy captain was about to ask what they needed them to do, the government reinforcements arrived. After telling Buddy the situation, he asked, "What do you need us to do?" When Buddy heard it, he knew that he couldn't take the enemy out to find help, because it would expose his companions to attacks from both sides. There was only one enemy, and if it could be solved quickly, it would not be a problem, but if it could not be solved, it would likely cause the rebels' already fragile defense line to collapse. There is a special biochemical soldier in the presidential palace, and ordinary bullets can't deal with it. Buddy made a decision in his heart: I will take it around in circles, and you guys prepare the rocket launcher just in case. Also, I haven't found Birykova yet, so you should pay attention. After saying that, he put away the communicator, looked back, and didn't see the biochemical soldier. This situation made him stop. The sound of gunfire outside rang out again. Buddy was worried that the other party would run away. Just as he was thinking about whether to go back, the wall behind him suddenly broke and a huge figure appeared. The tyrant took a shortcut and chased Buddy again. Buddy fired several shots to attract the enemy's attention again, and then ran away, so he didn't notice that his bullets injured the tyrant's cold face. But he couldn't get rid of the tyrant or keep a stable distance, so every time he was in danger, a licker would come forward to delay the tyrant's attack or pace. Unknowingly, Buddy found that he seemed to have run into a dead end. At the end was a heavy double door, and there was no other fork in the road. Although one side of the wall was a gorgeous floor-to-ceiling glass, he saw the bullet stuck on it and realized that the glass seemed very strong. So he let a licker try the hardness of the glass while still running, and it smeared brains on it directly. Although the unfortunate licker didn't die, he lost his combat effectiveness for a while. The tyrant charged at him again, and the licker who had wrapped his tongue around his legs was dragged away. So Buddy didn't hesitate and fired all his bullets at the lock of the double door in front of him. He could only take a gamble, enter the room first and hide behind the wall, and run out immediately when the enemy rushed in, so as to get some distance away. Buddy rushed in holding the door handle, but his foot missed, and he was so scared that he instinctively held the door handle tightly with both hands and hung in the air. It seemed that there was no bottom below. The tyrant who followed closely behind just missed the next step, and he fell straight down without being able to rely on inertia to rush to the far wall. Buddy breathed a sigh of relief, but suddenly felt dizzy and soon lost consciousness. However, just as he was falling, a pair of hands stretched out from under him and quickly grabbed him. This elevator shaft-like place had a big hole in the wall at some point. It was the people inside who grabbed Buddy and dragged him in. JD opened his eyes, looked at the unfamiliar ceiling, felt the soft mattress on his back, and didn't understand the current situation for a while. "Are you awake?" Shenmei had just treated the wound of a wounded rebel soldier when she saw JD open his eyes. "Where's Buddy? Where are the others? How is the battle going now?" JD said, supporting himself with his hands on the bed and trying to get up. Shenmei hurried over, held him down and said, "You can't get up." Although the bullet in JD's body had been removed, his body was still very weak. She then told him the current situation one by one. The people who saved Buddy were Parker and his group. Parker confirmed through the detector that there was a huge vertical space behind the wall, and knew that they had found the entrance to the underground passage. But the wall was more than 1 meter thick, so it was not easy to blow it up. Fortunately, Parker brought a thing called a wall drill bomb in the equipment he brought this time. It was thick and long and looked like a small missile, with a drill bit on the top and a foldable fixing frame on the outside. This equipment was inspired by the ground drill bomb, which can destroy an entire wall through an internal explosion. Parker and his group did not go down immediately after blowing up the wall. While discussing countermeasures, they were also waiting for the enemy's reaction to confirm whether the explosion had alarmed the enemy. As a result, before they had finished confirming, they saw a 2 or 3 meter tall giant falling down. Parker carefully looked up to check the situation above, and happened to see Buddy, who had fainted, falling down, so he rescued him. Although Buddy was unconscious, Parker brought first aid medicine, so he woke up quickly. The two had never met before, but there was only Leon between them, so there was no misunderstanding between the two sides, and they quickly determined the provinces of both sides. Led by Buddy, they returned to the ground. At this time, the battle on the ground was over. The rebels hiding underground only left those injured by the liquors and a small number of guards, and the other logistical personnel came to support with weapons. It is also because of this that those who hold their positions can turn defeat into victory in the face of the counterattack of thousands of enemies. Now the rebels only need to deal with President Birykova, and the whole city will officially fall into their hands. The rebels suffered heavy casualties, and JD is now in a coma, so Buddy, who returned to the ground, contacted Leon and others without stopping. When Leon and others sent JD to the medical room of the presidential palace, Ada used a scanner to confirm that the undead warriors of the government army were biochemical soldiers, which also confirmed the fact that the government army also used biochemical weapons. Not only Ada, Alex, and Leon also sent the data from the scanner to their superiors. President Adam, who received the news, did not hesitate. He left President Birykova alone and negotiated with Simmons with the intelligence he had recently collected. After that, the rebels directly occupied the medical room of the presidential palace, and all those who knew medical skills participated in treating the wounded. However, Leon only sent Chen Mei, and the others gathered together to search the presidential palace. They did not find the president, but found the bodies of senior officials such as the Minister of Defense. These people were killed by the tyrant in the temporary command center. Birykova did this because she knew that if these rubbish were caught by the rebels, they would definitely tell everything they knew without being tortured. Shen Mei told the other party what happened when JD was unconscious, and then answered the other party's second question. Buddy and the BSA went to the underground base to capture President Birykova. At this time, there were 3 parties responsible for this capture operation. The first team was a joint team of DSO and CIA, including Leon, Bruce, and Alex. The second team was Buddy from the rebel army and his remaining 12 lickers. As for the others, they did not follow and were responsible for the defense of the presidential palace above. After all, they did not have a satellite and had no idea whether the government troops had really lost their combat effectiveness. The last team was Team Parker and Team Jill. That's right, Jill also brought her team to support. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 565. After Jill completed the task of investigating the East Slavic Uprising Army, she went to Romania to meet with Ada and summarize the intelligence. Under normal circumstances, she would verify the data given by Ada, and then make the summarized intelligence into an investigation report and publish it on the official website. Let the public understand the recent work of BSA as clearly as possible. But the speed of the Lighthouse Country and the Bear Country was too fast this time, and they caught Jill and O'Brien off guard without informing BSA. At the same time, when Jill and Ada analyzed the intelligence, they mentioned that the government army might also have used biological weapons. Google searched can. In this case, BSA still couldn't rashly express its agreement or opposition to the two countries. Therefore, in order to obtain definite evidence, Jill took a short rest and immediately took a plane when the route was opened. Finally, she came to the presidential palace to meet before Parker and his men launched a general attack. Jill's team members are 2 men and 2 women. The person on the female side, except Jill, is the bodyguard arranged for her by Luo Guang. Luo Guang named this clone Luo Xiaomao, a petite female with short hair, but her behavior is very similar to that of a man. A nice name is tomboy, and a bad name is tomboy. However, Luo Guang's aesthetics in shaping people is still online, so other people generally only use the word tomboy to evaluate his clone. By the way, he gave this name just because he missed the cat he lost because of the time travel. Team Jill, Team Parker, Team Leon, and Buddy formed a joint force and prepared to bravely enter the underground base. Everyone has exchanged intelligence and quickly made a plan. The room where Buddy almost fell to death is actually the elevator shaft of the underground base, so naturally there will be no surveillance installed in such a place. At this time, Birykova was hiding in a room protected by reinforced glass in the underground base, confirming the situation outside through surveillance in various parts of the city. But the rebels had fought her for so many years, and had already figured out the opponent's tricks. So after the rebels captured the presidential palace, they also destroyed all the surveillance cameras and pulled the opponent to the same level as themselves. But before that, Buddy opened the door and found that the elevator was still seen by the surveillance camera. Birykova naturally knew that the entrance to the underground base had been discovered by the rebels. So after Jill and the others evaluated the situation, they did not immediately descend along the elevator shaft rope, because they were worried that the enemy had other means to monitor the situation in the elevator shaft. Then when they went down to the middle, if the enemy suddenly controlled the elevator to rise, they would not be able to escape. Of course, there is a certain gap between the elevator and the elevator shaft. As long as the chest or belly is not too big, they can avoid the rising elevator by sticking to the wall. The problem is that if this is the case, they certainly can't carry too much stuff down, and those who go down lightly will be like delivering food, and they will be beaten into sieves by Birykova's biochemical soldiers. Jill took the microcomputer given to her by Luo Guang, connected it to the hidden panel of the elevator, and tried to crack the system of Birykova's secret factory through the regional network. By the way, the computer that Mario used to control the remote-controlled Rolling Thunder was a replica of the one in Jill's hand. The microcomputer in Jill's hand was made with the legacy technology of Umbrella Corporation, and it was a reduced version of Luo Guang's special watch. The reason why Luo Guang released this technology was to promote it to the entire BSA organization, so that he could monitor everyone's actions through the Red Emperor. He would not wait until he officially took office to start these precautions. Back to the matter of East Slavia. Under the breakthrough of the Red Emperor, Birykova and her men had not had time to physically cut off the invasion, and the entire base had completely fallen into the hands of the Red Emperor. Birykova made a prompt decision and directly ordered to use physical means to directly shut down the central control computer of the entire factory and convert all equipment to manual operation mode. But for the Red Emperor, this time difference was enough for her to steal the factory map. After Jill and others discussed the plan based on the map, they started the elevator to go up. Birykova had no way to stop the elevator from rising except to blow it up. Is this the hole made by the tyrant? Jill looked up at the gap between the elevator ceiling and floor and said, "I wonder if that guy is dead." Buddy hadn't thought about this and was surprised. He didn't die after falling from such a high place. They just threw a piece of debris down and calculated the approximate height based on the time it took for the sound to return. It's hard to say, Leon agreed with Jill. If the ground is hard enough or there are some sharp objects, it's okay, but now it's hard to say whether these two iron plates can slow down the Tyrant's landing speed. Anyway, my advice is that unless you see the Tyrant break into pieces, don't take it lightly. Time is limited, let's act according to the plan. Jill entered the elevator first. The elevator was originally a large room, so there were still a lot of furniture in it, but Jill and his team were replacing it with sandbags and other bulletproof shelters. There is still space above. Ziomo climbed up the gap with Jill's help. Then she turned around and reached out to pull others up. This way, even if Birykova blew up the elevator and caused it to fall, they still had a chance to jump onto the steel bars of the wall instead of waiting to die in the elevator. After making all preparations, a licker released the elevator door opening button and pushed out the wooden chair blocking the elevator door. Has the elevator gone up? It seems they are ready to deal with us. Birykova didn't know what she was going to face yet, she just thought that the people coming were rebels. Should we take the opportunity to catch them all? The secretary looked like he was doing his best, bending down next to the sitting president and said, "We can blow up the elevator directly." He is one of the few people trusted by President Birykova. He has a somewhat cowardly personality, but his abilities as a secretary are still excellent. Birykova thought for a moment and said, "This is our important entrance and exit, and this move can only be used once. Do you think the other party's senior figures will be the first to come down?" The secretary shook his head and said, "But as long as we destroy this elevator, we don't have to worry about the other party continuing to attack us." Birykova snorted coldly. The other party said this because she didn't understand what rappelling meant. She explained, "It's useless. If the other party wants to come down, they have a way." Then Birykova said her plan: "Although this elevator is big, there are basically not many places to hide bullets. It is not difficult for us to eliminate the incoming people. The most important thing is that we can use the elevator to confirm when the enemy is coming." "I'm stupid. What happened to the factory after the central control was closed?" The secretary responded fluently and quickly answered the other party's question. The production department said that the assembly lines of Tyrant and biochemical soldiers have been affected. They can only manually adjust these biochemical weapons, which is much less efficient. While the two presidents were having a conversation, the guards regiment that was brought down was also seizing the opportunity to build a position and aim their guns at the elevator door that was about to open. In front of the elevator entrance is a parking lot, where a large number of containers are stacked, forming an excellent melee area. With a clanking sound, the elevator door slowly opened. Gunshots rang out instantly in the factory, and Birikova's guards opened fire immediately before the door was fully opened. Others kept firing, but the leader of the guards team only fired one round before he stopped. Using the suppressed fire, he looked inside the elevator and found that it was filled with bunkers. In this case, it would be difficult for the bullet to hit the enemy, so he immediately ordered an attack with grenades. Fragmentation grenades can be thrown over bunkers. Although the fragments after the explosion will be blocked by bunkers such as sandbags, they can at least threaten the enemies behind the bunkers and make them move. But at this moment, 3 lickers took advantage of the weakened firepower, fell from the ceiling, and quickly rushed out of the elevator. At the same time, 8 remote-controlled rolling thunders jumped out of the elevator under the cover of the licker. The enemy's grenade exploded, causing damage to the lickers hiding in the ceiling, but not causing any kills. The 3 lickers who ran out were unable to rush into the enemy group and complete the chaos, but one of them successfully blocked the muzzle of the light machine gun. Immediately after the rolling thunder exploded, Leon and others jumped down from the gap in the elevator ceiling. More remote-controlled rolling thunders were activated and continued to roll towards the enemy's position, buying more time for everyone to leave the elevator. "Let's go," Jill and others took advantage of the enemy's confusion and successfully rushed out of the elevator to find a new bunker. Retreat to the second line of defense to reorganize. The captain of the guards team knew the opponent's plan without even looking. After he roared angrily, he also prepared to move his position. As a result, as soon as he took the gun out, Luo Mao Mao's clone hit his palm with a shot, and he had to retract it again. It's not that the clone is looking through the eyes, it's that the other party shouted too loudly. Taking advantage of the enemy's chaos, Leon and others joined the battlefield with more lickers, and everyone successfully left the elevator. The most difficult step has been taken. Whether you can survive next depends on how many pounds you have on hand. President Belikova knew that the Guards regiment had suffered heavy losses due to the sudden explosion, and her heart could not help but bleed. She immediately ordered the Guards to retreat, letting the newly prepared tyrants and biochemical soldiers go up to consume the enemy's bullets and vitality. Luo Mao Mao's clone took the lead at this time. She beheaded the leader of the Guards team and chased the retreating people with a machete in one hand and a submachine gun in the other. The biochemical soldiers wanted to attack her, but the retreating guardsmen blocked the beam, making it impossible for them to pull the trigger. The guard soldier also knew that the enemy chasing behind him was taking advantage of him, so he tried to move left and right in an attempt to get rid of the enemy. But the clone controlled by Luo Guang followed closely behind, not giving the opponent a chance at all. The man suddenly jumped to the side intersection, and the biochemical soldier immediately raised his gun. However, Luo Mao Mao's clone shot first, killing several biochemical soldiers and then ducked into the junction. Go to hell, the member of the guards was waiting, holding a dagger to kill Luo Xiaomiao's clone. He had lost all his guns on the retreat, otherwise he would have fired at the enemies behind him. The gun is fast and accurate within 7 steps. Luo Guan controlled the clone and raised his hand to shoot, killing the man directly. He had deliberately left a bullet for this enemy before. He continued to control the clone to change the magazine of the submachine gun, and used the bunker to fight the biological and chemical weapons. When the enemy was attracted by Luo Mao Mao, Team Gill and Team Parker had already found their respective bunkers and shot at the enemy. On the other side, Leon and Bruce worked closely together to pursue the soldiers of the guards from the left, making Alex, who was following behind, feel like a redundant person. But this was what he expected. If he hadn't wanted to get first-hand information, he wouldn't have followed them down and got into danger, so he didn't rush to cooperate with Leon and the others and put himself in a supporting position. Leon and Bruce were both very accurate in their shooting skills. They covered each other, kept advancing, and eliminated the retreating guards. Unfortunately, they were only handsome for 3 seconds. After beating the fallen dog, they had to flee in panic in the face of the defensive positions composed of biochemical soldiers who were not afraid of life and death. A member of the guards climbed onto the cargo box and was about to shoot Leon, who was hiding from a high position. 2 gunshots. The enemy fell to the ground. He stood high and saw far, but he was also more likely to be seen. So Alex found the enemy and shot at him immediately. Leon was startled by the falling enemy, and reflexively shot again, and then looked over. Be careful of the enemy above your head, Alex reminded the other party in a dignified manner. Thank you, Leon smiled and responded. Everyone is not stupid, so they know that climbing up the cargo box is risky and profitable, but now there are battles everywhere, and it is impossible to confirm whether the opponent can see them. So except for that guy, no one else climbed up the cargo box to attack. But just because people are not suitable does not mean that the lickers are not suitable. They can crawl forward, making it less likely to be discovered, and they mainly attack at close range, so they can approach the enemy in any way that is convenient. Buddy's physical condition is not very good. If someone looks at his eyes at this time, they can find that his eyes are covered with blood, and 2 blood tears have flowed down. Every large-scale command of the lickers will make the placa parasites in his body more integrated with him. but he still relied on his strong will to control the lickers, because this was his last battle. He has fought all the way until now, and only the last 8 lickers are left in his hand. But Buddy did not hold back, and did not guard against Leon and the others, controlling all the remaining lickers to kill the enemy. From beginning to end, he had only one goal, that is, to avenge his fiancée. At this time, Birykova had 3 tyrants in her hands. The tyrant that fell off the elevator before was too heavy and still couldn't resist the free fall attack under the blessing of gravity. The reason why the number did not change was that the producer of the secret factory adjusted another tyrant. Now the central control system of the factory was shut down, so they could only adjust the tyrants one by one, otherwise there would be more tyrants to join the battle. These 3 tyrants were all concentrated in the middle road, where the 2 BSA teams were located, and they had already launched a charge while taking advantage of the fire suppression of the biochemical soldiers. "Come on," another member of Parker's team was excited. Parker fired 3 bursts and then retracted his head into the bunker. Hearing this, he smiled and said, "You finally found a chance." There was one last piece of equipment that had not been tested in this BSA equipment test mission, which was the electromagnetic gun carried by a single soldier. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 566. It needs to be explained here that the inspiration of the electromagnetic gun does come from the sturdy and powerful electromagnetic gun in the Raccoon City Underground Research Institute. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel Network rightward arrow dot. But because of Luo Guang's appearance, Jill's fate in Raccoon City has changed dramatically. She has never entered the Raccoon City Research Institute, and naturally she is not like in the game, carrying an electromagnetic gun to fight the goddess of vengeance who has turned into a huge monster. So this weapon was proposed by Luo Guang to be developed by the people of the European branch of BSA, specifically for large-scale biological and chemical weapons such as tyrants. However, he did not provide any technology for this weapon. It was developed by Quint Chechame, a technician of the European branch. The appearance of the electromagnetic gun is similar to that of an anti-tank rifle, but the barrel can be folded, which is more convenient for storage. The appearance design of the gun is not difficult for Quint. The biggest difficulty lies in energy supply and heat dissipation, and he also gave his own temporary answer. Lewis opened his backpack, took out the heavy battery pack, and then plugged the connecting tube into the gun to start charging. This battery was in his backpack, and other combat props could only be shared by others. The reason why it cannot be charged in advance is naturally because the main body of the electromagnetic gun cannot always withstand such a large amount of electrical energy, and it needs to be fired as soon as possible after charging. In addition, the designers considered that the tyrant is not a fixed target and often chases people, so the battery pack has a shoulder strap, and Lewis can carry it and wait for charging to be completed. Only one shot, don't shoot it wrong. Mario dealt with the approaching biochemical soldiers and specifically instructed. This electromagnetic gun is still in the trial stage, and the battery pack is only enough to fire a 100% energy shot, and the barrel is basically scrapped after firing the first shot. Coupled with the weight problem, they naturally only have one chance. Sure, Lewis licked his lips and smiled happily. Although Luo Xiaomao's clone controlled by Luo Guang is a member of Jill's team, he did not let the clone stay with Jill. Jill, who was strong-willed, did not want bodyguards to follow him all the time to protect him, so in this battle, Luo Xiaomao's clone was always in a free state. As long as the enemy was dealt with, Jill could be protected. Now the two sides entered a stable situation of gunfire and grenade throwing, and at this time, the clone needed to take the initiative to open the situation. The clone was not a person, Luo Guang directly controlled it to jump onto the cargo box and killed the enemy group like the licker. The enemy naturally discovered Luo Xiaomao's clone parkouring on the cargo box and immediately opened fire. The clone's eyes could even capture the trajectory of the bullet, so the clone did not need to use a speed far beyond that of ordinary people to successfully dodge the bullet, which was just an enemy pistol in the eyes of others. The clone, who obviously had a cute name and appearance, was decisive in killing, and would definitely gain something from his actions, instantly causing chaos in the enemy camp. Only one of the three tyrants chose to go back to support the biochemical soldiers, and the other two attacked Jill's team and Parker's team respectively. The two teams did not meet up, but chose to act separately, attracting the hatred of the tyrants while staying away from others. Parker, who was running ahead, asked without looking back, "How long does it take to charge?" 3 minutes. The speed is already very fast for a test weapon. If it is faster, the electromagnetic gun will not be able to bear it. But for Parker and others who were being chased by the tyrant, even 1 minute felt long. "We will cover you." Mario took out the remote-controlled Rolling Thunder and attacked the tyrant one by one to delay time. Parker and another teammate raised their guns and fired, but soon found that the bulletproof performance of the opponent's clothes was too good, and their assault rifles could not penetrate it at all. However, the enemy's head was still exposed, so they did not get discouraged and immediately shifted their aim. The tyrant reacted quickly, charging with his head protected, and the explosion of the Rolling Thunder caused little damage to it. Parker's team was forced to split left and right to dodge. The tyrant did not turn and directly crashed into the container, and went through it. Oh no, although everyone did not communicate again after the battle started, Parker knew that the direction seemed to be the area responsible for Leon and others. On the other side, Leon and the other two were startled by the loud noise coming from behind, and saw a bald man suddenly broke through the container and rushed out. Bullets are ineffective against it. Alex found this out after firing a few shots. The tyrant shook his head, and after being attacked by the opponent, it immediately changed its target. Bruce cursed, "We are caught in a pincer attack, what should we do?" Leon had a deep understanding of this, and said directly, "Run." He was very decisive. He and others were in a bad position, not a good place to deal with the tyrant. The most important thing is that their weapons can't cause much damage to the tyrant at all, so they have to seek opportunities. Parker's team saw through the hole in the container that the tyrant was suddenly attracted by something else and ran away, so they didn't take a detour and went straight in. Before going out, Parker deliberately turned his head to confirm the situation outside, and then they found that they were stopped by the biochemical soldiers on the enemy's defense line. Luo Guang saw that everyone had gone to other places, and he didn't let them go. The clone turned around like a cheat, and solved all the biochemical soldiers around him. The tyrant arrived late and smashed the clone with his fist raised high. One cut off his arm, one cut his head off. The tyrant was easily killed by the clone with 2 cuts. However, Luo Guang would not forget to finish off the opponent. He controlled the clone to cut the last cut into the tyrant's chest. The bulletproof and explosion-proof coat was no match for the big knife. He had used the clone to detect the biological weapons he had encountered along the way, including those lickers and biological soldiers. Before, based on the news, he thought they were really 2 different biological weapons. Now, after electromagnetic wave detection, he found that both the government army and the rebel army's biological weapons were the product of the Plaka parasite. The lickers were indeed the product of the T-virus mutation, but after artificial adjustment and implantation of the subordinate Plaka parasite, they could be controlled by the dominant Plaka parasite, which perfectly solved the problem that the T-virus biological weapons were difficult to control due to low intelligence. The government army should also have a similar situation. There were traces of parasites in the bodies of those biological soldiers, but what surprised Luo Guang was that none of these biological weapons had explosive insects. He guessed that this new generation of Plaka parasites had lost this feature. The tyrant could not be detected because of the clothes on his body, but Luo Guang was still cautious and stabbed the place where the parasite was parasitic. As for how to explain why he could easily kill the tyrant, He had already prepared the answer. Because the material of the knife in his clone's hand was the latest alloy, which was harder than the invisible straight knife in Luo Guang's hand, as long as he could avoid the attack, it would be easy to kill the tyrant. After dealing with the enemies here, Luo Guang immediately controlled the clone to help Jill. The other side did not carry electromagnetic guns or other things, and it was too troublesome to use conventional weapons to kill the tyrant. Jill also had experience in dealing with the tyrant. After confirming that the tyrant did not carry hot weapons and could only attack by punching and kicking, she made a plan to eliminate the enemy. The first thing was to find a relatively open place that was not easily disturbed. For the time being, the elevator door that had been cleared was the best place. Then the three of them surrounded the tyrant in a triangle formation. As long as the tyrant attacked one of them, the other two would shoot at the tyrant's weakness. Jill had the smell of Luo Guang on her, so the clone quickly reached their position and shouted, "Let me deal with the enemy." Pause shooting, Jill ordered immediately. She was worried about accidentally hurting the opponent. As soon as the voice fell, Luo Xiaomao's clone had come behind the tyrant. The tyrant also noticed that the enemy came behind him, and immediately turned and swung his fist. However, its body turned around, but its head did not turn around, and it slowly fell to the ground. Jill widened her eyes. She knew that Luo Xiaomao's fighting ability was very strong, but she didn't expect it to be to this point, which made her think of her boyfriend. Luo Xiaomao explained casually, "My weapon is good. If the weapons in your hands are all .50 BMG bullets, you can easily destroy this tyrant." Jill glanced at the smooth cross-section of the tyrant's neck and nodded. Indeed, if the weapons in their hands were strong enough, they would not have to deal with the enemy. Suddenly, a beam of light appeared on the other side of the factory, punching a hole in the factory ceiling. Jill and his men looked at each other and immediately went over there. The last tyrant stood, but there was a large transparent hole on its head, and there were traces of high temperature burning around it. Lewis used an electromagnetic gun to kill the enemy with one shot, but he did not cheer for it. Instead, he looked at the comrade who was leaning against the container with his head hunched. Parker was relieved to see that the enemy was killed with one shot, but he still had to remind, "The battle is not over yet, stay alert." Yes, Lewis hung the electromagnetic gun that could no longer be used next to the battery pack, and then he would take it back to collect data. Parker came to Leon and his team under the cover of Mario and immediately took out the first aid kit. Leon did not look back, and the CIA agent who was no longer breathing in front of him said, "No need, he's gone." They were chased by the tyrant and happened to run into the guards who were outflanking. Alex was unfortunately shot in the chest twice when the two sides suddenly encountered each other, but Leon and Bruce were miraculously not injured. With enemy soldiers in front and tyrant chasing behind, Bruce threw away his assault rifle and tried his best to drag Alex behind the bunker, but in this situation, Leon and the others could not give him first aid. When Parker and the others came to deal with the enemies including Tyrant, Alex was already dead. Parker bit his lip and said, "Sorry, we are late." Bruce shook his head and said, "You came very quickly, it's our bad luck." Parker and the others had already made a quick decision to use the remaining remote-controlled Rolling Thunder to pass through the passage targeted by the enemy, and indeed they caught up without wasting any time. The main problem was that Tyrant was running around, making it difficult for Lewis to aim at his head. Mario also shook his head and said, "It's our fault. If we could successfully lead the Tyrant away." Leon interrupted in a deep voice and said, "It's meaningless to say this now. Let's continue the mission." Gil, Luo Xiaomao, Leon, and Buddy came to a French window. Birykova was in front of them, and the two sides were separated by at least 6 centimeters of glass. Buddy was the first to come over. When he saw the enemy, he immediately shot and emptied the magazine, but he couldn't hurt the enemy at all. As for the lickers, they had all been wiped out in the previous battle. The others, led by Parker, did not come because they received a notice from Ada and were now on their way to destroy the biological and chemical weapons factory here. Ada did not participate in the melee, but she waited for Jill and the others to successfully break through and descend the maintenance ladder. Then, while everyone's attention was on the battle, she bypassed the battlefield and went to investigate inside the factory. After finding the production line, she immediately shot and killed the production staff who were adjusting the tyrant, so Belikova was unable to send more biological and chemical weapons for support. It's people like you who can only be incompetent and angry and lead the country into chaos. Belikova still maintained her demeanor. She didn't escape because she had nowhere to escape. How could there be only one entrance to the space? It was her pride that did not allow her to run away like this. Of course, she wasn't mocking without thinking, this safe room was specially made. Even if there is a 1 in -10,000 chance that the opponent will break through the defense of this room, President Belikova still has personal bodyguards around her who can delay her escape. You are the one, cough. Buddy coughed up blood before he could finish his words. Gil said, we are BSat. Belikova, you are suspected of producing and using biological and chemical weapons. Put down your weapons and surrender immediately. Belikova spread her hands, indicating that she had no weapons to put down, and at the same time said, as for the issue of biological and chemical weapons. She pointed at Buddy who was vomiting blood. I reported this guy for using biological and chemical weapons. By the way, why did you come with the other party instead of arresting him? You are not colluding with terrorists such as the rebels, are you? Gil was angered by the other party's sophistry, and was about to explain Buddy's matter, but Luogwan controlled his clone and interjected, he belongs to him, and you belong to you. Don't get involved. Does his matter have anything to do with you? Just close it if you don't. Mind your own business. Luogwan knew that Gil's character would definitely explain things about the rebels first. The more he spoke, the easier it would be for someone to get caught, and he would fall into the opponent's trap. At that time, it will be easy for the other party to switch sides or take over the conversation. Luo Mau Mau's clone turned to Jill and the other two people and said, let me see if I can cut through this wall. Jill nodded and said to Buddy, I want to take her back. Only by confirming the source of the biological weapons in her hands can we prevent more biological crises from happening. What Psta needs is a living person, so she is worried about what Buddy will do. Before Buddy could answer, Belikova, who was sprayed in the face, sneered and interrupted, huh, even a rocket launcher can't penetrate this glass. You just want to break through this wall with these broken guns. She didn't even notice that Luo Xiaomau's clone said to cut open, not to shoot. Belikova turned around and was about to leave, waved her hand and said, you guys take your time. I'll take the first step. Luo Mau Mau cloned himself with a machete in one hand and a submachine gun in the other. He made sure that the others were ready and took a deep breath. Your Excellency the President. The personal bodyguard who had been paying attention to the situation felt that something was wrong. The person on the other side of the glass seemed serious. If that was all, he wouldn't say much, but even through such a thick glass, the hairs on his body stood up, and he felt inexplicably uneasy. Belikova looked back at the other party, but heard a harsh sound. Then gunfire rang out, and the bodyguard who had been talking before was shot and fell to the ground without even raising his gun. The Psta men had already approached through the glass. Belikova was shocked, looked at the people approaching with guns, and raised her hands. Luo Guan was not polite and directly controlled the clone to throw Belikova to the ground. He pressed her neck before taking out the silver handcuffs. You're under arrest. Belikova. Meow. Thanks for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 567. The morning sun rose slowly, and the warm sunshine shone into the medical room of the presidential palace. Searched can on Google. Buddy fainted again from exhaustion after seeing Belikova being caught. When he woke up again, he turned around and saw JD sitting in a wheelchair next to him, looking at him with a worried look on his face. JD is still too reluctant to walk now and can only use a wheelchair. Ever since Leon and others carried Buddy back, he has been inseparable from each other. When he saw the other party waking up, he was stunned at first, then startled, and finally asked with concern, "Buddy, are you okay? I'll call someone over." "I'm fine, wait a minute. I fainted after Belikova was taken away by the BSA people. Do you know what happened after that? It was Leon and the others who brought you back after you passed out. Now Belikova is being guarded by people from the BSA. I heard that she will be sent to the International Court of Justice for trial. Your revenge should be considered successful, right?" JD knew that the other party wanted to shoot Belikova dead, but he hoped that the other party could look forward. However, this was Buddy's private matter after all, so he used a question in the end. But Buddy didn't answer this question, just asked, "Where are Leon and the others?" "We are here," Leon's voice came from behind the medical curtain door. Immediately afterwards, Leon, Shenmei and Bruce walked in wearing brand new surgical clothes, and Bruce pushed a surgical trolley in his hand. Buddy only thought that the three of them had just helped to deal with the injuries of the wounded, and it was not strange. He said, "I didn't sense any monsters that I could control. All those lickers should be dead. Let me accept the trial next." He had promised Leon, so he would not break his promise. JD knew about this and immediately said, "Wait. Leon and Buddy don't have any monsters they can control anymore. Can we just stop arresting him?" Buddy took the initiative and said, "JD, there is no need to plead for me, this is the ending I deserve." "No," JD denied loudly, "if it hadn't been for this war, you wouldn't have gotten this ending at all. You could have lived happily with Sarah." Buddy also fell silent when he heard his fiancée's name. Leon said, "Buddy can't survive the time he is arrested and put on trial. You should also see what his eyes have become." The expression on JD's face suddenly seemed to be still, and finally he said in a low tone, "I saw it." Leon revealed the outcome Buddy was about to face. His current situation will eventually turn into a zombie, just like your former leader. Buddy said, "I had this awareness from the moment I picked up the weapon. I have no regrets for those who sacrificed their lives." "Then you should live for those who sacrificed their lives," this was what Leon said. Bruce added silently behind him, "Enough people have died today. Both the government forces and the rebel forces suffered heavy losses, and the CIA agent Alex he knew also died." Shenmei had a gloomy look on her face. Although she and Alex hadn't been together for long, she already regarded him as her friend. Moreover, she helped treat the wounds of many injured people today, including several people who could not be saved from death even if she tried her best. Seeing that Buddy did not refute, Leon continued, "Now there is a method that may be able to save your life. But the success rate is very small, and even if it succeeds, there is a high probability that you will be paralyzed in your lower limbs." JD was very happy to hear the first half of the sentence, but when he heard the second half, he didn't know what to say for a moment and could only look at his good brother nervously. Buddy faced it calmly and said, "Is this the price of using biological and chemical weapons?" "This is the price." After Leon said this, he did not rush the other party. JD looked at Buddy and said with a flash of inspiration, "Buddy, the civil war may be over soon, and the school will reopen. Those children need you." Buddy's blood-red eyes suddenly became softer, and he remembered the agreement he and his fiancée had made, the ideal life they once had. Teaching and educating people is a common ambition between him and his fiancée. The self-abasement on his face was wiped away, his expression became strong, and he said to Leon, "Come on then, I want to take a gamble." Leon nodded, but did not start the operation immediately. Instead, he said to JD, "Tell this matter to the rest of the rebel army, and then call all the people who understand medical technology over. After all, Buddy is the nominal leader of the rebel army. Naturally, they cannot perform this operation rashly. After all, the first step of this operation is to shoot the Plaka parasite in the opponent's body that has not yet fully integrated. Bruce took the initiative to push JD out to explain the situation, while Shenmei immediately began to organize and double-check whether the surgical tools were complete. On the other side, many members of the rebel army gathered in front of the room where Belikova was being held. They demanded that the BSA hand over Belikova and wanted her to be lynched and then put on trial. Naturally, Gil did not dare to agree to the other party and kept emphasizing that their BSA would give Belikova the punishment she deserved. But from the perspective of the rebels, Belikova's crimes were not only related to biological and chemical weapons, but also a series of crimes such as the massacre of civilians. As a result, the two sides couldn't argue. In the end, Luo Guan controlled Luo Mao Mao to step forward and resolve the dispute. Both sides had their own reasons, and the clone did not directly deny the rebels' ideas when persuading them. Finally, the clone directly set up a ring and knocked down the rebel soldiers who challenged him one by one, so that these rebels calmed down. In addition to this function, it can also make the rebels understand that it is not feasible to force their way through. However, after obtaining O'Brien's consent, the clone told them that if the East Slavic government was re-established, Belikova could also be extradited back for trial. The BSA used physics and reason to convince the rebels and others, and finally resolved the crisis. After a while, Ada and Parker's team returned from the underground factory. They did not leave with Jill and the others, and the two sides divided the work. Jill's team was responsible for arresting Belikova, while Ada and Parker's team were responsible for collecting evidence. "How is the situation?" Jill knew from Parker's expression that the harvest was gratifying this time, but he still asked. As expected, Parker smiled and said, "We have collected enough evidence to basically confirm the fact that the East Slavic government forces produced and used biological weapons. It is worth mentioning that after the evidence was collected and consolidated, the production data and production line of the entire biological weapons were destroyed under the video recorder to ensure that others could not collect the technology of producing biological weapons from these things. For this, Leon and his team knew this process a long time ago and had no objection, so they did not participate in the collection of evidence from beginning to end. In this case, report it to the headquarters together with the rebels." Jill nodded and gave the order. Although Buddy and other rebels fought side by side with them, they finally successfully attacked the presidential palace and discovered Bereikova's true face. But Jill did not hide the issue of the rebels using biological weapons, and reported it directly to O'Brien for decision. As O'Brien announced the news that the East Slavic government forces used biological weapons, various forces were talking about it, and they all focused their attention on the Lighthouse country and the Bear country. However, how could the two countries give up the interests of East Slavia because of this matter? 2 days later, their troops entered the capital of East Slavia and chose to take over the entire country forcefully. Because in their view, the interim government of East Slavia used biological and chemical weapons, so they would naturally not recognize it as a legitimate government, and their actions would naturally be more unscrupulous. They first cleared out the biological and chemical soldiers wandering in the capital, imprisoned those government troops as war criminals, and then announced the establishment of an interim government. The East Slavic rebels initially planned to use the trial of Bereikova to establish an interim government and declare the end of the civil war. Now the Lighthouse country and the Bear country intervened and took the lead, making their plan aborted. They dared not speak out about this, and did not publish any information that was unfavorable to the two countries on the internet. Because these two countries gave the rebels an irresistible condition, that is, not to hold the rebels responsible for using biological and chemical weapons. As an organization under the United Nations, BSA was naturally even more powerless. So after Jill and the others packed up their things, they took Bereikova away from East Slavia. The two countries of the Lighthouse Nation did not stop Jill and the others from taking Birykova back for trial, because Birykova, who could no longer serve as president, was not as important as a barrel of oil in their eyes. In fact, Simmons did not know what news Birykova had received from Arias, otherwise he would not allow her to go, and would even create an accident and let her die before the trial. In short, Jill and the others went back smoothly. The three DSO agents Leon, Bruce, and Shenmei did not leave immediately, but went to JD's house. At this time, Buddy and other Capital rebels no longer needed to hide in the cave to survive, and basically returned home, even if their homes had become ruins. JD's home was still well preserved and not broken or rotten. The only problem was that it had been looted several times, and there was basically not much left in it. Buddy, who successfully survived, was recuperating there at this time, and he happened to have a companion. Is this really okay? It was surprising enough that the Lighthouse Nation and the Bear Nation did not hold them accountable for the use of biological weapons by the rebels. Now even the BSA did not hold them accountable, which made Buddy difficult to understand. Leon learned the reason from Jill and replied, "As you said, the two Lighthouse Nations did not find any living lickers during the cleanup operation. After all, he was a DSO agent, and it was not surprising that he got this information from the Lighthouse Nation army. Plus you also paid a price, so the BSA intends to put all the responsibility for the rebels' use of biological weapons on your former leader. Since the culprit of the rebels' use of biological weapons is dead, there is naturally no need to hold Buddy accountable. Although this matter does not seem kind, many people in the rebels think this is the best outcome." Buddy also opened his mouth and said nothing more. Leon said, "No matter what the situation is now, it is better than fighting every day before. That is only temporary." Buddy smiled bitterly, "Now it's just a new group of people oppressing us." In fact, Leon received a call from President Adam this morning. President Adam also contributed to the fact that the rebels were not held accountable for various crimes like the government army. He said, "The Lighthouse Country and the Bear Country are only cooperating because of immediate interests. In order to win over local forces, they will definitely not squeeze you as they did before. East Slavia should have a relatively stable period in the future." But Leon did not follow President Adam's suggestion and told Buddy, the leader of the rebel army, about the mercy of the Lighthouse Country. Because this is nothing but hypocrisy. Bruce, who was leaning against the wall, concluded, "There is still hope after all." Buddy nodded, looked at the bright sun outside the window, and said, "That's right. As long as you live, there is hope." After several people confirmed Buddy's situation, there was basically nothing to do here. It was time to go back to the Lighthouse Country to resume their lives. As for Alex's body, it was also picked up by CIA personnel on the day the Lighthouse Army arrived. Leon also had many things to ask President Adam, but after he left JD's house, he saw Ada leaning on the lamppost with her arms crossed. "Eh? Aren't you a BSA investigator? Why are you here?" Bruce took the initiative to say hello and said, "Are you reluctant to let go of this handsome guy like me?" Ada smiled lightly at Bruce and said, "Please give way." She casually pushed Bruce out of the way and walked up to Leon under his surprised gaze. "Handsome guy, are you interested in taking a vacation together?" 2 days later, Leon returned to the Lighthouse Country and was immediately summoned by President Adam. "Your Excellency, what do you want from me?" Leon had already made arrangements for the DSO when he and Ada were on vacation. Bruce would also brief the president on his behalf. President Adam sighed first, and then said, "Do you blame me for the East Slavic incident?" He didn't intend to beat around the bush, but chose to be honest with Leon. The DSO organization is a sharp blade used by Adam to fight Simmons, and through collecting intelligence, he also knows that there is an unusual relationship between Simmons and Leon, so Leon will definitely not be attracted by the other party. Therefore, even if he did not come back to resume his duties after learning about Leon East Slav, He did not order the other party to come back immediately, and allowed the other party's application for leave. Leon didn't answer, but the expression on his face was enough to let Adam know that he was angry, but not as big as expected. Of course, this is thanks to Ada, who helped Leon vent a lot of his anger. President Adam first asked Leon to sit down and explained, "I was completely unaware of the actions of our army in East Slavia. And after the incident happened, I couldn't take the initiative to jump out and slap my own country in the face. But you are the president, how could you know nothing about this? It's impossible for you not to know that the army has been mobilized," Leon said bluntly, expressing doubts. President Adam sighed and said, "I was also deceived. The troops that entered East Slavia were originally going to participate in NATO joint military exercises." He continued, "When I found out about this, I was equally angry, but my opponent had already taken the lead. I couldn't do anything at that time except to confirm the opponent's power and finally find out something for me. Your Majesty could have at least told us at that time. When our troops entered it, in the end, we agents would be unpopular with both the rebel army and the government army." Leon had been vigilant at that time because he was worried that the two parties would retaliate because of his status as a lighthouse countryman. Adam said that he had also considered this, and continued, "But I don't know the status of your mission. If your identity as an agent is exposed, it will be even more troublesome. At least your identity as a reporter can protect you better than your identity as an agent at the time." Leon exhaled, his expression relaxed, and said, "I understand. No matter what he thinks, he can only choose to forgive in the end, because he is now an official agent of the lighthouse country and enjoys the convenience of the lighthouse country, so he will naturally be restrained by it." President Adam knew that the thorn in Leon's heart would not go away for a while, so he didn't say anything more. He said another main reason why he came to Leon: "Only when you sit in this position will you find that our country has a big problem." Leon looked at the other party, not knowing why the other party suddenly said such a thing, and asked, "Is it about the biohazard? Otherwise, political matters have nothing to do with you." President Adam shook his head and said, "Didn't you find a problem in what I said before? As the president of the lighthouse country, I know nothing about the military's actions in East Slavia." His tone became more and more excited, and he shouted to Leon, "Because there is a huge black hand controlling this country behind the scenes." After investigation, he discovered that his old friend Simmons was behind the black hand. Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting meow. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Miao. Chapter 568. Hearing President Adam say that there is a black hand behind this country, Leon immediately thought of the X-organization that Luo Guang had mentioned to him. That Simmons is the leader of this organization. However, Leon did not respond to these things, because he promised Luo Guang to keep them in his heart. President Adam knew that this news must be difficult to understand. He told the information he had collected, "Do you know Simmons? The mission in East Slavia was carried out under his secret leadership. In addition to the military choosing to go along with it, I found that there are many capital companies involved in this to share the cake. The military does not have equipment and professional technicians for mining oil and rare minerals, but the military took all of these with them when they went to East Slavia, and immediately mined them when they arrived at the destination." Leon asked, "Isn't this surprising? After all, it is profitable, whether for those companies or for our country. What can Simmons get from this? Why did he do this?" The news Luo Guang told him mentioned that the X organization cannot be defined as a general decent or villain organization. The X organization, which has a history of hundreds of years, is not comparable to those organizations that have been established for 1 or 2 years. So far, it has not said that it wants to rule the world. This organization is indeed powerful in the lighthouse country, but the families that make up it are not all from the lighthouse country. Instead, most of the member families are ancient nobles inherited from Europe. It was just that they went to the lighthouse country to settle down in order to escape the war. So the purpose of its actions may not be for the interests of the lighthouse country, but it is definitely for the interests of its own family. If it is simply summarized in one sentence, the purpose of the existence of the X organization is to allow these families to obtain supreme power and benefits under the order they have established. To a certain extent, this organization can also be regarded as the guardian of the current Western order. But Luo Guang finally added that the X organization is essentially just a tool for those families, and it is not a good thing for most people. He has joined the X organization to use the resources of this organization. Back to the conversation between the two. President Adam did not deny what Leon said. In the East Slavic incident, he was more concerned about his rights as president, but this did not mean that he turned a blind eye to the suffering of the East Slavic people. Yes, although I took over the presidency directly from the vice president, I also have the support of various parties behind me. Since I am a political party, I also have capital support. But this is the game rule of the lighthouse country, which is not something I can change personally. Leon is not a newcomer, so he naturally understands this. Just like when he was an agent at the beginning, he could only act passively and could not do anything. In the end, it was Luo Guang who woke him up, so he began to find ways to follow the rules to get to where he is now. Now, basically all biochemical crisis incidents in the country will be handed over to him, so that he can destroy the biochemical viruses and data on the spot. President Adam is still expressing his inner resentment, but this does not mean that I don't want to be a good president who loves peace and cares about the people, nor does it mean that I want to erase my conscience. Leon couldn't help but be touched by this, and thought of the conversation between Shen Mei and the president at that time. He suddenly asked, "Sir, you said that the other party is the black hand behind the country, so is it possible that the other party has also installed monitoring equipment here? Organization X is powerful, and this kind of thing is easy for it?" When President Adam heard this, ripples appeared in his heart. The other party was thinking about him. Didn't it mean that the other party began to believe in him? He replied, "Don't worry, I have asked someone to check it." President Adam had already asked someone he trusted in the FOS organization to come and check it, otherwise he would not dare to shout so loudly just now. Leon nodded and asked, "Then what are you going to do next, Mr. President?" President Adam already had a rough plan in his mind, and said, "First of all, we have to expose Simmons' true face, and I plan to use this East Slavic incident as a breakthrough." Simmons, who was being discussed by Leon and President Adam, called Luo Guang at this time. But he didn't have a task for Luo Guang or ask Luo Guang to find Ada again. Although Ada was involved in this East Slavic incident, she has always been very cautious and always stayed out of the picture when Bruce was carrying the camera. Even if she was inevitably photographed, she could only be photographed from behind, and she had changed her appearance, so Simmons didn't know that Ada had gone to Eastern Slavia. Simmons called Luo Guang this time just to consolidate the trust of his confidants. "We will also get rid of Arisia, so you don't have to worry about the biological weapons." This was originally part of the X organization's plan, and it had nothing to do with Luo Guang's concern, but Simmons used it to win people's hearts. Will the organization not use those biological weapons? Luo Guang did not directly ask how to deal with those biochemical factories, but expressed his concern for the organization. Simmons replied, "The East Slavic incident has been very clear. If the government army did not have biological weapons at the time, it would have been defeated by the rebels long ago. And those rebels are just a group of poor and white rabble. The strength of the X organization is already strong enough, so it naturally does not need biological weapons or biological viruses to protect itself, but these things can threaten itself. So now the attitude of the X organization towards these things is that you can't have them, but we can't not have them. Luo Guang didn't think the rebels were a mob, but he didn't refute this point. Simmons just called to talk about this matter, and when he saw that Luo Guang had no other questions, he hung up the phone. In fact, Luo Guang was still somewhat interested in how the X organization would deal with Arius, because he remembered the matter of this biological weapons dealer. According to the intelligence he collected, Arius is still in love with his lover and has not married. If the situation really develops like that CG movie, this bad guy will be hit in the face by a missile at the wedding, and then accidentally survive and turn evil, and finally lead to a series of biochemical crisis events later. At this point, Luo Guang couldn't help but wonder how the missile blew Arius' wife to pieces, but Arius beside him was unharmed. Now Hong Huang is trying every means to confirm Arius's network of relationships, locate the location of his relatives and friends, hack into their mobile phones, etc. This matter is temporarily handed over to Hong Huang, who is now busy sorting out the information of the X organization and the Apocalypse organization. Let's talk about the X organization first. Through the unremitting efforts of the Donald family and the East Slav incident, they gathered together for a small meeting, so that Luo Guang has now infected half of the families in the organization with the Shinra virus. Although he has no grudges with those families, the existence of the Apocalypse organization forced him to do so. So he needs to organize the resources in the hands of these families so that he can call them immediately when he needs them. And the new intelligence of the Apocalypse organization naturally comes from his undercovers, Li Qingxian and Xena. Through the undercover and the S-level adapters in his organization, Luo Guang now has a general understanding of the high-end strength of the Apocalypse organization. The number of S-level adapters is about 10,000, of which the Wang family accounts for 1/3. In terms of the size of the Apocalypse, the proportion of S-level is not large, but the number of A-level adapters in the Apocalypse organization is countless, and there are many specialized attack adapters that can threaten S-level adapters. He is now sorting out the combat data of those S-level adapters who have been challenged. Although sparring requires a certain point, it is still possible to see the fighting style and characteristics of each S-level adapter. Unless there is an accident, Luo Guang never fights a battle without preparation. Facing so many enemies, he did not plan to ask Jill and other protagonists for help, nor did he think of asking those who were strengthened by the Shinra virus in the GIM's troops to help. Luo Guang's high-end combat power is actually just him and his clones, and at most he can add Li Qingxian and Hina under his control, which is far less than the number of the Apocalypse organization. So he plans to use the power of all parties to hinder the other party's plan, and then go to the headquarters of the Apocalypse organization alone to carry out the decapitation plan. In the last resort, Luo Guang may have to break his promise to Jill. In addition, he plans to let Jill and others disperse around the world to help stop the conspiracy of the Apocalypse organization, or concentrate their strength to form an elite team to put out fires everywhere. The specific action depends on what the so-called new era is, and what the conspiracy of the Apocalypse organization is. But this does not mean that he only has to accumulate strength now. Although he has not yet completely controlled the entire X organization, he is ready to cause some trouble for the Apocalypse organization and use the method of boiling a frog in warm water to reduce the enemy's strength one by one. Only by increasing and decreasing can the gap in strength between the two sides be narrowed. Luo Guang did not personally tell Simmons the information about these strongholds. He is now basically at the top of the X organization, and his position and other things naturally cannot be further promoted to the management level, so there is no need to brush points. In order to prevent the disclosure of his own intelligence sources, he directly asked the Donald family to tell Simmons the information and use the power of the X organization to attack. The world has temporarily restored peace. Time passed, and another month passed. Jill was packing her luggage in her office at this time. In the East Slavic mission, Parker performed very well and could already take charge of a matter on his own. Now the equipment technology of the branch has made great progress again, so even if she is not there, the branch can easily deal with various difficult biochemical crisis events. Only after standing at the height that Luo Guang once was, Jill understood why her boyfriend always liked to act alone, all for the sake of protecting others. Jill packed her luggage because her transfer application to O'Brien was approved, and the recommended Parker would become the new director of the European branch. O'Brien had naturally prepared for Jill's application to work in the African branch. What Parker didn't know was that in addition to Jill's open inspection, O'Brien also secretly inspected him and successfully passed the observation. So the appointment of Parker as the new director of the branch was not blocked at the headquarters. Jill's office was very tidy. She was not the kind of person who would put all kinds of sundries on her desk, so a simple cardboard box was enough for her to pack everything. Dong dong. Come in. Jill didn't look back and put the photo of her and Luo Guang into the cardboard box. This was her only decoration in the office. Director, it was Parker who came in. Although Jill had told him these things a week ago, the closer he got to the day of his official appointment, the more nervous he became. You are the minister now. Jill picked up the cardboard box easily and said, don't be too nervous, it will affect the confidence of the people below you. At least you have to maintain the state of the inauguration ceremony this morning. At the inauguration ceremony this morning, she also went to support the other party. Parker scratched the back of his head and said, I was stern this morning because I was nervous, not pretending to be cold. And I suddenly jumped from a small agent to such a high position, it would be strange if I was not nervous. Besides, I don't think the people below are so convinced of me. Just get used to this position. I was the same before, worried that I didn't do well or something like that. Jill smiled and continued, I asked you to lead the team alone before so that you would have a reason to refute others, otherwise there will always be people saying that I led the team and you achieved such outstanding results. In O'Brien's internal report on the East Slavic incident, it was mentioned that it was Parker who found the conclusive evidence that the government army used biological and chemical weapons, and also praised him and his team members for their spirit of bravely entering the Devil's Cave. Jill looked at Parker, who was still a little nervous, and comforted him, I was just a dismissed policeman, and I suddenly became such a minister. Until today, I have done a good job. I believe you can do it too. But my position is coveted by many people, and they will definitely find ways to pull me down. It is a small matter for Parker not to be a minister, but it is a shame for Jill's trust and cultivation. This also loses Jill's face. Believe in yourself, use your strength to shut these people up. As long as you have a clear conscience, you don't have to worry about anything. Jill herself has encountered these things, but she solved them with her own ability and did not trouble Luo Guang or O'Brien. And I'm not gone. I just went to work in the African branch. If you encounter something you don't know how to do, you can also contact me. Jill paused and deliberately added, but it's best to contact me before 10 o'clock. After all, her life at night is colorful, and she has to fight Luo Guang for 300 rounds with Ashley. Parker was stunned for a moment, and then nodded. 2 knocks sounded, and someone knocked on the door with his knuckles. Come in. Jill was the director of the European branch until midnight tonight, so she was still the owner of this room. Luo Guang pushed the door and walked in. He came here to pick up Jill back to Africa. Have you packed? Jill raised the cardboard box in her hand and said, it's packed. But our new director of the European branch doesn't seem to be ready yet. Hello, Director Luo. Parker greeted Luo Guang at this time. Luo Guang took the initiative to shake hands with Parker and said, the European branch is handed over to you. Contact me at any time if you have any trouble. It was also because of his and Jill's willfulness that Parker became the European director. He felt that he was forcing the growth of seedlings, so he would naturally do his best to help the other party. Thank you, but I'm fine. Parker couldn't lose face for his branch in front of the director of the African branch. Jill nodded with satisfaction. Luo Guang did the same, turning to Jill and asking, "I'll wait for you outside." Jill looked at Parker and said, "No need. Parker, the European branch is in your hands." "Yes," Parker stood up straight, "I will never let you down." He had a fulfilling life with Jill during this time, and he also understood why he was respected by the entire branch. He also respected this warrior who had been persistently fighting against biochemicals since the Raccoon City incident. "Let me help you carry it." Although the weight of the cardboard box was not worth mentioning to Jill, Luo Guang took the other's luggage on his own initiative. Jill did not refuse, and handed the things to her boyfriend with a smile. The two walked out of the minister's room. Jill did not look back, but raised her hand and waved, saying, "Hurry up and get familiar with this room, and you don't have to see me off." "Yes." Parker did not take a step, and saluted in a standard military manner. Luo Guang and Jill came to the gate of the European branch building, and his car was parked at the gate. "You are really welcome." Luo Guang looked at the people at the door and smiled. Jill was also very touched. This was the best reflection of her work achievements over the years. The people of the European branch of BSA made way for the two. They were not unconvinced by Parker, but they respected Jill too much. The two sides did not have any dialogue. Jill stopped and raised her hand to salute the BSA. Everyone returned the salute in unison, watching Jill, who was smiling, get on the car and drive towards a new life. Meow, thank you for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 569. Luo Guang and Jill landed safely and came to the city where the BSA African branch is located. Ashley already knew the time the two would arrive and took an SUV to pick them up. Because the person driving the car was the bodyguard assigned to her by Luo Guang. "Ashley, have Jill's affairs been arranged?" Luo Guang, who helped Jill put away her luggage, took the initiative to sit in the driver's seat and drive. The bodyguard on the other side did not follow her into the car. Her mission was over and she took this opportunity to leave. This clone will then go to the parent base in the Caucasus and enter a dormant state. Ashley's lovely face poked forward from the middle of the back row and said, "It's all arranged." Shiva has no objections. Gil knew that the two were talking about his post after being transferred to the African branch. Now Shiva holds the position of captain of both the Standing Army and the Special Force, which is too much pressure for her. In fact, there were other suitable candidates besides Shiva at that time, but Luo Guang, considering Gil's personal experience in managing the European branch, had long planned to hand over the Standing Army to Gil's command and management. This is to avoid the problem of power struggle in the future, so he let Shiva, a person with no scheming ideas, hold the two captain positions. Of course, although Shiva is very young and was ordered to do so after the company was in turmoil, and is not obsessed with power, this does not mean that Luo Guang can ignore the other party's ideas, so it is better for Ashley to communicate with the other party first. "What do the troops here in the African division usually do?" Jill asked her about the daily work content of her current position. The content of each BSA branch may be different, so even if she knows the content of the Standing Army work of the European branch, she still needs to ask her boyfriend to confirm it again. Luo Guang held the steering wheel and replied, "Training and search, Mao Mao will tell you the specific situation." After he went to Europe, Luo Mao Mao's clone withdrew from Jill and came to Africa first to take up the position of deputy captain of the Standing Army. Ashley said playfully, "Kitty kitten meows, you don't want to find a wife again, do you?" This was a half-truth and a half-lie, both a joke and a serious inquiry. "You're overthinking." Both Luo Mao Mao and the bodyguard who had been arranged next to Ashley were his clones. How could Luo Guang marry him? He would be thankful to God if he could find two wives. If he has another wife, wouldn't he be afraid of being struck by lightning? Jill was both rescuing and threatening in secret. "Being with you two is already a blessing earned by doing good deeds in my previous life." There is no trace of falsehood in Luo Guang's words. "Sister Jill, Aren't you curious when he met so many women of all kinds, but Ashley seemed to want to break the casserole and ask the question. The bodyguard on her side is a tall woman with regular but not exquisite features. The biggest shortcoming is the steel plate. In fact, the two clones created by Luo Guang have the same shortcoming, and their appearance can only be said to be good. Because he couldn't let his clone compare to his two beloved girlfriends. Jill understood why the other party suddenly mentioned these things. She pretended to think seriously and said slowly, "When you say so, there is indeed a problem here." With a smile on her face, Ashley said, "That's right, and he's either with me or with you. Where on earth do you have the time to find these two beauties?" She had not forgotten Jill's previous request, but she could not let Luo Guang get involved with others anymore, and she did not want to share Luo Guang with others anymore, so she wanted to join forces with Jill to pursue the question. "How long does it take to find a bodyguard?" "As long as there are channels, someone will help find a suitable bodyguard." Luo Guang's tone was a little aggrieved, and he continued, "I only had two requirements at that time, one was to be strong, and the other was to be female. In the end, the two of them were introduced by the agency. He also used this to prepare the identities of the two people for future reference, using the channels of the Underworld's Round Table organization. So he then added the origin of the two bodyguards." Ashley quickly accepted this statement. Luo Guang's words made sense. She also asked the bodyguard similar questions. And according to her observation, there was actually no communication between her bodyguard and Luo Guang, and everything was done business. Jill said, "I also specifically talked to Luo Mao Mao about this. At first, I thought she was Luo Guang's sister. I have no relatives in this world." Luo Guang said this in a normal tone. In fact, he is used to it, whether it is this world or the world before time travel, so the only thing he has missed over the years is his cat. Fortunately, his home is not sealed. If he were not around, his cat would probably return to a wandering life. Luo Guang's words made everyone chatter to death. Jill and Ashley were speechless for a moment and didn't know what to say. He didn't want to make the atmosphere tense, he just didn't want the two of them to talk about chasing his two clones. So Luo Guang took the initiative to break the deadlock, "But I will have two wives soon, and we will form a big family by then." The two smiled and started talking about other topics. The three returned to the African branch building, and Luo Guang asked the deputy minister to prepare a welcome party in advance. This was not done through the public account, but he spent his own money to treat the people in the branch to a good buffet. Jill was chatting with someone from the African branch. She knew the heads of each department, so she would know who to ask for help when something happened. She was not the kind of person who would only ask her boyfriend for help. Suddenly, her cell phone rang. Jill looked at the incoming call reminder, answered the phone and said, "Chris? I haven't contacted you for a long time." Both of them were heads of BSA branches. They were busy with work, so naturally they had less contact. This was also the reason why Luo Guang would invite people to hold a Christmas dinner every year. "Jill, something happened." Chris was very anxious. "Calm down, what happened?" "Didn't you receive the news?" Chris said in surprise. "A biochemical crisis broke out at the Terra Sephir headquarters. This headquarters is under the jurisdiction of the BSA European branch, so he contacted Jill as soon as possible to get the latest information. I resigned the day before yesterday, and now I am in Africa. If it was just a biochemical crisis at the Terra Sephir headquarters, Chris would not be so anxious." So Jill asked, "Where was Claire at the time?" "Yes, but I called her and she didn't reply to my text messages. I was worried that something had happened to her." Chris held his phone tightly. He had asked Piers to get the equipment and prepare the plane to Europe. Jill was also worried about Claire's safety and said, "I will contact the European branch immediately to help you confirm the situation." "Thank you," Chris said, "I'm on the plane later. If you don't answer the phone, just send me a message directly. After that, he hung up the phone without waiting for Jill to answer. There is a biochemical crisis at the Terra Sephir headquarters. I'll leave you for a while, Jill said to the people around her. Just as she was about to find Luo Guang, she saw that the other party was also on the phone. She walked over and didn't wait in vain. She immediately contacted Parker and soon got first-hand information. What happened at the Terra Sephir headquarters was not a regular biochemical crisis. According to the survivors' confessions, they found that the incident started with a group of special forces in black clothes launching an attack. Then the biochemical monsters of the T-Night Abyss virus appeared in the building to create chaos. Have the personnel been rescued? Please keep an eye out for the name Claire Redfield. Jill told the other party Claire's name and said, if she is okay, let her contact her brother. Parker understood Jill's meaning and immediately went to do it. He didn't need to give any other orders. The people of Terra Sephir had received antibiochemical training, so there were not many casualties, and the situation was quickly prevented from deteriorating. Now the biggest casualties came from the special forces. So the list of survivors and the list of casualties were quickly counted. But Claire's name was not on either list. Parker didn't tell Jill this information immediately, because it was possible that this person happened to leave the scene at that time. So he personally asked several survivors and retrieved the surveillance video, and soon came to a conclusion. First of all, Claire did not leave the building at that time, and the room she was in was the target of the Special Forces raid. The enemy left directly after raiding that room. From the video, the enemy carried several sacks when he left, so Claire should have been captured by the other party. But why is this? Parker couldn't help but think, because the reason behind this was most likely the truth of this biochemical crisis. Of course, he didn't indulge in thinking, and took out his mobile phone to tell Jill about it. I know, I'll tell her brother. Jill thought that Chris was going to Europe, and might not contact the European branch in time in an emergency, so she told the other party about the North American minister's trip to Europe before hanging up the phone. Luo Guang hung up the phone before Jill at this time and said, what about the attack on Terra Sephir headquarters? He received the news from the Red Emperor, but the Red Emperor had another reason to find him at the beginning. Jill nodded and said, Chris said Claire was there at the time, and Parker confirmed that Claire was missing, and it was inferred that she was captured by the enemy. Claire was captured in the biochemical crisis game once in Operation Veronica, and the other time was in Revelation 2. In the plot of Revelation 2, she was captured at the Terra Sephir New Year's party. But Luo Guang had captured Alex long ago and solved the opponent's problem, so he had already eliminated the source of the appearance of Revelation 2. Just in case, he also confirmed Alex's current situation, and it was certain that this attack had nothing to do with the opponent. Jill then told Parker's investigation results, saying, the enemy used the T-Night Abyss virus developed by the FBC, but this organization has been disbanded, not to mention that the remaining virus samples are also stored in a heavily guarded research institute. Hearing this, Luo Guang thought of one thing, that is, there is a character in Revelation 2 who is related to the FBC, and this person's name is Neil or something. So he immediately arranged, you ask Parker to check if there is a person named Neil in this incident. Is this person related to Claire's disappearance? Jill was surprised that the other party had just learned about this matter and gave a clue. But now saving Claire is important, so she did not ask about the source of the clue. Luo Guang did not confirm, not necessarily, let's confirm whether this person exists first. After Jill sent the question to Parker, she said to Luo Guang, I want to help Chris. But you just came here, it's not good to leave without even seeing your subordinates. Luo Guang continued, and you can't help much in the past, it's better to wait until Claire's whereabouts are confirmed before asking for leave. Okay, Jill thought about it. It would be a bad influence to ask for leave right after taking office. As soon as she finished speaking, her phone vibrated. It was Parker's reply. Parker said that there is a person who fits the name you said, named Neil Fisher. He is the commander-in-chief of the Terra Zephyr operation. Claire discussed things with him at the time. What's his situation? Is he missing too? With the accurate name and position, Luo Guang can let Hong Huang track down this person's network of relationships. Jill nodded and asked, but he may also be a victim? I will have someone investigate this person's affairs. You should get familiar with the environment here first. Luo Guang unconsciously used a working tone. However, Jill was not displeased by this and nodded to show that she understood. Sister Jill, what are you talking about? Ashley came over to ask after seeing that the two had finished talking. Luo Guang took the initiative to tell Claire's story. Then he said, by the way, Ashley, please help me book a flight for 2 days later. I will send you the specific time, place, and identity information later. I know Ashley made an okay gesture and said, I will go to book the ticket after getting the information. Jill's face showed a puzzled expression and asked, are you going to help Chris? With Luo Guang's help, Claire will definitely be rescued. Indeed, she doesn't have to go, so it's the best of both worlds. No, if it's going to Europe, can't I just tell Ashley to book a flight for me? The previous call from the Red Emperor gave Luo Guang an important news, that is, Arius is preparing to hold a wedding. In addition to what Simmons said before, he felt that the plot of Revenge in the CG movie might be repeated in reality, so he would definitely watch this festive event as soon as possible, and he would go to see the big fireworks. After all, he was curious about how Arius survived. From a realistic point of view, it was impossible for his wife to be uninjured when she was blown up with only one hand left. However, due to the Apocalypse organization, Luo Guang did not want to waste too much time on Arius, even if he would research a new virus after turning evil. So the biggest purpose of attending the wedding was to ensure that he was killed more cleanly. Jill and Ashley looked at each other. This is another matter, and it's not me who's going. Luo Guang now has the ability to clone, so he naturally doesn't need to go out in person. The only problem now is that more and more things are going on, and the number of clones he accurately controls is not enough. This leads to clones like Wu Song's clone who have no important things to do for the time being becoming more and more lazy. Similarly, among the bodyguards arranged for Jill and Ashley, he only prepared a position for Luo Xiaomao, who accompanied Jill when she went out to perform tasks. And Ashley was basically by his side, so he let another bodyguard leave hibernation. Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting meow. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 570. Although the incident happened at the Terra Zephyr headquarters in Europe, it had nothing to do with the BSA African branch. But considering that the brother branch was busy dealing with the biochemical crisis, I always felt a little uncomfortable eating and drinking here. In fact, if Jill hadn't told the people around him at the time, others would not have thought there was anything wrong even if they knew about it later, but since they knew about it, they were not in the mood and turned to discuss the biochemical crisis. Fortunately, this welcome party only had a meal and chat session, and Luo Guang didn't prepare singing and dancing, so although the atmosphere became serious, it didn't end hastily. After dinner, Luo Guang announced the disbandment and took Jill and Ashley home, without arranging activities such as KTV. However, it is inevitable that others will have the next entertainment program, so even if Luo Guang doesn't arrange activities, he told them that they can come to him for reimbursement with the tickets later. After returning home, Luo Guang said hello and went to take a shower first, while Jill and Ashley stored their luggage in the bedroom. There are also 3 wardrobes in the bedroom, one of which has been empty, waiting for its owner to arrive. Ashley opened Jill's closet and said, "I've cleaned this closet today. Sister Jill, you can just hang your clothes." "Thank you." Jill thanked the other party for helping her clean the closet in advance, and then opened her suitcase. The clothes inside were neatly arranged according to their types, so it was very convenient to store them. While sorting out the clothes, she said, "Do you think Luo Guang has changed a little?" Ashley couldn't figure out what the other party was referring to, such as changes in length, width, and hardness, so she asked back, "Sister, which aspect are you talking about?" Jill sorted out her thoughts and said, "If it was before, with us all here today, he wouldn't go to the bath alone, and he would definitely invite us." Ashley understood what they were invited to do without saying much. However, she no longer blushed because of such suggestive words. She couldn't help but recall her previous life and nodded, "Indeed. It's rare that Sister Jill is here, he must be thinking about the things of milk and water blending. Speaking of which, it seems that he hasn't delivered food as frequently as before recently." Ashley's face flushed slightly. Sometimes I even took the initiative to sit on it. Although she was used to this topic, she still felt a little shy to say such straightforward words. Jill was not jealous because of this. Her physical changes were more inclined to fighting, while Ashley was more inclined to that aspect. Naturally, there were gains and losses. Now thinking back, Luo Guang had not done it again in the past few days when he came to pick her up, except for the first day of the long-awaited wedding. At first, she misunderstood him and thought that Luo Guang was tired of her, but when she thought of the duel that day, Luo Guang was very involved and full of love, she gave up this idea and thought it was just her illusion. Now that she was finally free, she put more thoughts on her boyfriend, and naturally found the problem immediately, so she discussed it with Ashley. Jill said slowly, "There is another point. Sometimes he suddenly becomes dazed and I don't know what he is thinking. His enthusiasm for handling things has also decreased a lot. If it was before, he would definitely take the initiative to solve the problem of Claire's disappearance in order to prevent me from taking risks, and he would not be indifferent. There are indeed no clues now, and Parker is still collecting intelligence, but Luo Guang has his own clues. How could he not take action immediately?" Ashley agreed with the other party's statement and put forward a hypothesis: he is not indifferent. Could it be that he is too tired? I woke up in the middle of the night several times and found him working in the study. After all, she didn't wake up in the middle of the night every night, and Luo Guang would not show sleepiness even if he stayed up late, so she didn't know whether Luo Guang stayed up late when she didn't wake up. From this aspect, Luo Guang's enthusiasm for handling work has not decreased, but has increased a lot. Jill stopped what he was doing, but soon got up and hung his clothes in the closet, saying, "He has strong physical fitness and recovery ability, and is good at slacking off. It is unlikely that he will feel tired, right?" Luo Guang's physical fitness and recovery ability can be called abnormal. Ashley shook her head and said, "Of course I know that. I mean mental fatigue." "Does that mean Luo Guang has something on his mind?" Jill used a more understandable word. Ashley nodded and said while helping him put away his underwear, "You can say that. Luo Guang's work of staying up late seems to have nothing to do with PSA, but I saw that he didn't take the initiative to mention it, so I didn't take the initiative to ask." She felt that Jill was Luo Guang's favorite person and should be able to speak more easily. Jill replied, "I will ask him what he is busy with recently. This is not in line with his character. But we have to find a time when he can't escape, and you have to help." Ashley heard the other party's hidden meaning and said, "I will definitely help. Since the first month of my relationship with him, I understand how tired you, Sister Jill, were to satisfy him before." Luo Guang came out of the shower, and then Jill and Ashley took the shower. Faced with the clear instructions of the two beauties, Luo Guang did not directly push the door to go in for the threesome, which made Jill and the others more certain that the other party had something on his mind. After taking a shower, the two of them discussed their next plan over the sound of water before coming out. They were all wrapped in a bath towel, and their seductive figures could be revealed with just a slight pull, since the curtains in the house had been drawn anyway. However, when Jill and Ashley returned to the bedroom, they found that Luo Guang was not waiting here to taste the two beauties, and he did not leave any information. They searched around the house and finally found her boyfriend in the study who was checking Neil Fisher's information. The door of the study was not locked. Luo Guang heard the footsteps of the two, turned the swivel chair to look at Jill and Ashley, and immediately turned on the appreciation mode. Jill's thighs were tight, but they looked so soft that they seemed to be able to be pressed out of water. Although they were tightly wrapped in a bath towel, they further highlighted the perfect figure with golden ratio hidden inside. Ashley on the other side was not wrapped very tightly, leaving room for imagination. The water drops on her hair that had not been wiped dry dripped on her collarbone, and finally slid into the ravine along the line of the collarbone, which was also full of wonderful fantasy. The two of them looked really different. Luo Guang did not forget the important matter. Just as he was about to talk about Claire's disappearance, he saw the two of them coming over in a silent and aggressive manner. He asked with a puzzled look on his face, "What's wrong?" His perception ability told him that the two seemed angry. Jill and the talkative Ashley did not reply, but grabbed Luo Guang's arms on the left and right, dragging him to the bedroom. Luo Guang did not struggle either. On both sides were jade rabbits wrapped in a bath towel, ready to come out at any time, making him unable to help but struggle about which one to take care of first. Of course, he thought about it, but the most important thing for him now was to find a way to calm the anger of the two. But while being dragged to the bedroom, Jill and Ashley both had stern faces and ignored his words. The two of them worked together to throw Luo Guang onto the big bed where three people could roll together, and untied the restraints at the same time, and pounced on Luo Guang with their teeth and claws bared. At 7 o'clock the next morning, the three had just finished the battle last night. Jill and Ashley were sweating profusely. Although Luo Guang did not sweat, he had paid a lot. However, after the main course was served, there was dessert. When the three of them helped each other clean the marks on their bodies, Ashley took the initiative to attack, and they had another fierce battle. Luo Guang still won the final victory. As a reward, Luo Guang needed to prepare breakfast for the three of them while the two of them were dressing up. Jill and Ashley sat together and looked at each other, seeing the helplessness in each other's eyes. Yesterday, they actually planned to force Luo Guang to ask about his thoughts when they were in power. But they didn't expect that they would lose themselves in the joy not long after they started, and devote themselves to it, feeling Luo Guang's hot love. Luo Guang felt that the saying "fight at the head of the bed and make peace at the foot of the bed" was indeed correct, and it was worthy of the wisdom of the ancestors. Ashley whispered, "Then ask later." Jill nodded and said, "But be careful not to be fooled by him. He is used to handling things by himself." Luo Guang took a plate in each hand and a plate on his head, and took out 3 plates of breakfast at the same time. Ashley, who had a serious face, laughed and was amused by Luo Guang's current appearance. The comrade in arms was broken in a second, which made Jill speechless and relaxed his expression. When Luo Guang came out, he noticed the change in the expressions of the two people, and he did not ignore it. He put down the food, sat in the seat, and said, "You have something to tell me, right? Talk while eating, otherwise the food will be cold and not delicious." Since her boyfriend said so, Jill did not hesitate and said directly, "Are you worried about something?" Then she said what she talked about with Ashley yesterday. Ashley lifted her hair by her ear and said, "But judging from yesterday's situation, there seems to be no problem. You did misunderstand." "I'm not worried," Luo Guang suddenly realized and quickly explained, "I'm just busy recently." He now needs to devote more energy to controlling his clone, so he has more time to be in a daze. As Luo Guang's secretary, Ashley said, "But Psy hasn't had much to do recently. At most, it's just regular inspections." Jill looked at Luo Guang suspiciously and said, "Are you hiding anything else from us?" Luo Guang said, "I dare not. Do you know how many biochemical terrorist organizations there are now? So far, the only wanted organizations are the Greyhound organization, the Beekeeper Organization, and the newly discovered Apocalypse Organization. Ashley gave the answer. Among them, the Apocalypse Organization was confirmed to exist by the BSA in the Mahavir incident. Kara initially only wanted to prove that her kidnapping was the work of the Apocalypse Organization, but the BSA was accidentally involved, which changed things a little. Although Luo Guang decided to burn down the laboratory because of Ada's appearance, BSA still knew about the Apocalypse Organization from the relics of Indy and the president of the academy. Luo Guang nodded, looked at Jill, and said, "I mentioned this Apocalypse Organization to you before." Jill also remembered after being reminded by him, "I remember it." She had heard this name from her boyfriend a long time ago. At first, Luo Guang said that he was a member of this organization and had lost his memory. Because this organization is just a secret organization and has not done anything bad. Later Luo Guang also clarified that he did not have amnesia. It was the people from that organization who wanted to abduct him because they liked his body. In the following days, this organization did not appear again, so she did not think of it for a while. Then, while Luo Guang was confused, Jill directly told Ashley the situation at that time. After saying that, she glanced at Luo Guang and said, "What? Since the Apocalypse Organization has emerged, there is no need to keep it secret from Sister Ashley, right?" Naturally, Luo Guang did not dare and would not object. Ashley had the right to know, but she didn't expect the other party to tell her immediately on the spot. He didn't give Ashley a chance to ask questions, and brought the topic to the Apocalypse Organization. These two organizations have been confirmed to exist, but due to lack of clues, we have not been able to eradicate these two organizations. Therefore, I have been busy with these two organizations recently. Matter of an organization. Luo Guang paused and said, "BSA will have a lot of things to be busy with next, but in my opinion, the chance of winning this war is not great now, so I am not in a daze recently, but thinking." Jill was shocked. She knew more about the battle than Ashley, and said, "With your fighting ability, don't you have a good chance of winning? The Beekeeper Organization is just an organization that the Apocalypse Organization brought to the surface, so the main enemy is only the Apocalypse Organization. But for people like me who can fight, there are tens of thousands of people in that organization. The combat effectiveness of the 12 seats above S level is even more of a mystery." He didn't know the situation of the 12 seats, so naturally he didn't dare to let Li Qingxian and Li Qingxian compete in the name of asking for advice. Gil said, "If they are as strong as you, we BSA can't beat them." Luo Guang nodded and said, "Yes. But don't worry, I will not arrange a death mission for my subordinates." Ashley couldn't get in the middle of this kind of thing, so she understood why Luo Guang didn't tell her these things. This is something that only Gil, someone who can fight alongside him, can understand and discuss. Of course, Ashley does not underestimate herself, she also has her own advantages and strengths. If Jill is the woman beside Luo Guang, then she is the woman behind Luo Guang. Providing assistance to her loved ones and preparing a safe haven for home is what she can do. Luo Guang continued to explain the situation of the Apocalypse Organization, saying, "Those strong people are usually pampered and have legal status. I can't find out their relationship with the Apocalypse Organization now, so I can't take action against them for the time being. But they will not condescend. Down to the grassroots level." Gil understood and said, "Does that mean we won't run into these people? Only target their lower level personnel to weaken the opponent's strength?" Luo Guang still followed his usual approach and said cautiously, "Yes. But there is a high probability that it won't happen. Don't take it lightly. In addition, the other side also has many elite soldiers, so you must be cautious when the time comes. They are the kind of person who blows up the entire base at every turn." He then told the two of them about the Boston bombing as an example. "So you are thinking about how to deal with the Apocalypse Organization these days?" Ashley found an opportunity to summarize the topic. Luo Guang nodded and said, Yes, if it weren't for this bad organization, I wouldn't have postponed getting married to you and having children. Meow, thanks for subscribing and voting. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tongmiao. Chapter 572. 3 days later, Arius' wedding was held as scheduled. Indeed, Luo Guang received the information that the wedding would be held 2 days later. But Arius may have sensed Simmons's murderous intentions towards him, or just for safety reasons, so the initial wedding information was all fake. However, Luo Guang monitored more than 1 or 2 of Arius's relatives and friends, and the people who received the information did not set out in advance to book a hotel in the city where the venue was located, so he was not deceived. In addition, Simmons was not deceived. Hong Huang found that in addition to herself, there were other people who were monitoring the mobile phones of the people attending the wedding, and soon found out that they were people from the X organization. So the ambush at Arius' fake wedding was in vain. Of course, Simmons could also take advantage of the situation and deliberately fall into the trap to let the enemy relax their vigilance, but after reading Arius's file, he felt that the other party would not relax if he did so, and naturally would not waste the organization's resources. Indeed, as he thought, Arius did not relax his vigilance even on the day of the real wedding. He announced 2 different fake wedding times and locations, while the real wedding was held on an uninhabited island with beautiful scenery. The wedding venue, food, and other matters were all handled by Arius's capable men to prevent the wedding from being leaked to the greatest extent. Luo Guang borrowed a private submarine from one of the families controlled by the X organization to smuggle and transported his clone to the island. The island was protected by Arius's people, so he chose to go ashore on the cliffside, then crossed the mountains and came to the other side of the mountain. The wedding was held on a grassland a few kilometers away from the bottom of the mountain. Luo Guang's clone did not go down immediately to kill, but found a tree, assembled guns while looking at the venue from a distance. The auspicious time has arrived, and the wedding started on time. The guests took their seats, and the pastor came on stage to preside over the wedding. Arius, one of the protagonists of the wedding, was already waiting for the ceremony in front of the pastor played by his friend, with a happy smile on his face. The music began to play. Although Luo Guang's clone was far away, he could still vaguely hear that it was not the familiar wedding march. The best man and bridesmaid entered the venue as the music began. Under the guidance of the pastor, the guests stood up one after another. Although Arius did not do good things, he knew many relatives and friends. Luo Guang counted them and found that there were more than 100 people present. You should know that those who can attend his wedding are trustworthy people, so this number is not small. Then 2 ring children appeared and handed the diamond rings they held to the pastor. Luo Guang naturally saw the scene through his clone and knew that there were children at the scene, but he did not take any measures. He remembered that someone on the internet once said that it was not kind to launch an attack on Arius when he got married. But soon this remark was drowned out by the angry scolding of others. This behavior is indeed not kind, and those guests who attended the wedding are not necessarily bad people, such as Sarah's relatives and friends. According to the information in Luo Guang's hand, more than half of them were unaware of Arius's secret business. But Arius himself was a bastard. The biological weapons he sold brought disaster to many people and also destroyed the families of those victims. In this case, he should not expect others' kindness and kindness. Arius also knew this very well, so he took multiple precautions. As the pastor announced the bride's entry, the music changed and the wedding march began to play. Under normal circumstances, the bride would enter the venue holding her father's hand. But for various reasons, Sarah entered the venue holding her best friend's father Diego. This father was Arius' good brother and the head of his bodyguards. He handed Sarah's daughter to Arius on behalf of his father. Next was the most important moment. Just like in movies and TV series, the music stopped and the host began to ask the bride and groom whether they were willing to become husband and wife, that is, to live together through life and death. Luo Guang controlled the clone and looked up at the sky with a feeling. A drone appeared in the distance. It's exactly the same as in the movie, he complained in his heart. Sometimes I can't understand the thoughts of the goddess of fate, so he doesn't think about these things anymore. At the wedding, the pastor asked Sarah the last question, "Are you willing?" The drone didn't come directly above to drop the bomb, because the X organization used precision-guided missiles. Everyone at the wedding focused on the wedding, and the guards farther away didn't look up, but focused on the ground alert. Sarah looked at Arius, and her love couldn't be hidden at all. Fortunately, Luo Guang is not a single dog, and he doesn't eat this dog food. After the vows, the two sides exchanged rings in the presence of the pastor and guests. Luo Guang looked at the missile that began to fly down, and muttered, "Showing affection will die quickly." At this time, someone finally noticed that something was falling rapidly in the sky. Arius and Sarah, who were immersed in happiness, didn't notice this. They were hugging, kissing, and feeling. There was a rumble, and the missile exploded in the center of the venue. Luo Guang did not go over immediately. He looked up at the sky and found that the drone hovered in the sky. After confirming that it hit the target, it immediately left. It's really so casual, he felt that the X organization's action was too sloppy. In fact, the X organization also wanted to be more rigorous, but the drone had limited fuel, so it was forced to leave. The surrounding security personnel were alarmed and immediately ran to the wedding scene to try to save the survivors. "Okay, it's time for me to work." The clone jumped down the tree and ran to the wedding scene. At the wedding scene, Arius was like a Superman in the world. He was covered by the missile's killing range and was blessed by the goddess of luck. His body was not injured. But if you look carefully, you can find the gap in his clothes and the red blood on it. Arius was stunned by the sudden explosion. He still felt the softness of his lover's hand and a downward force. He turned his head and looked at his beloved, but there was no trace of Sarah beside him. Arius looked down and found that he was holding only Sarah's broken arm in his hand, and the diamond ring on his ring finger was also covered with dust. The bodyguards around came over quickly and immediately searched for survivors. They soon found Arius kneeling on the ground. Just as they were about to go over, they saw him suddenly yelling to the sky, roaring out his inner anger. The captain saw the broken arm in the boss's hand and naturally understood why the other party was so angry, but the work could not be stopped because of this. He was about to take two people forward to ask if the boss was injured. However, just as he took the first step, gunshots rang out, and the bodyguards who were searching for survivors were shot and fell to the ground before they could draw their guns. The clone controlled by Luo Guang rushed out with a PKM light machine gun and quickly killed the bodyguards who did not react in time. Arius was awakened by the gunshot. He first took Sarah's ring and put it on the ring finger of his other hand, and then turned his face twisted with anger to Luo Guang's clone. His eyes wet with tears were full of anger, and he seemed to want to eat the enemy in front of him alive. With a flash, he dodged the bullets, snatched the MP7 submachine gun from the dead bodyguard, and counterattacked in the direction of the clone. This guy is not right. The other party's operation of dodging the bullet was not to predict the direction of his shooting, but to avoid the bullet at a speed that ordinary people could not reach. The clone did not rush to cover Arius with bullets, but chose to kill all the bodyguards. The bullets he shot at Arius before were also aimed at the opponent's legs. Because he wanted to catch the opponent, and then infect the opponent with the Shinra virus, and pull out the opponent's biochemical weapons production line at the same time to ensure that it would not revive. Go to hell. Arius on the other side had no idea of catching the clone to interrogate the mastermind behind it at this time. The only word in his mind was revenge. A level? Or S level, Luo Guang's clone avoided the opponent's attack and kicked the opponent away with a whip kick, while evaluating in his heart. Arius attacked again relentlessly, and Luo Guang controlled the clone to throw away the weapon in his hand and face the enemy directly. The opponent's fighting skills were not bad, and his attack speed was fast and unpredictable. Unfortunately, his defense was limited, and he could not block Luo Guang's heavy punch at all, and his blocking arm was directly broken. But almost the next second, Arius's arm recovered as before, and he attacked Luo Guang again, but was stabbed several times and defeated again. Luo Guang played with the short knife made of hardened armor in his hand, licked it, and said, "My knife is poisonous." Of course, the poison here refers to the Shinra virus, so even if he licked it, he would not be poisoned. There was a blood groove on the knife, and he quickly analyzed the blood on it. Arius did have a biochemical virus in his body. Luo Guang named the virus Bestial Virus according to the name of the database. It is a conventional body-enhancing virus, and the improvement on him is negligible. At the same time, this virus has no special abilities, so I won't go into details. Arius struggled to get up, and he didn't hear Luo Guang's words at all. At this time, he was thinking only of the happy memories with Sarah. Arius charged at Luo Guang again, but suddenly his eyes went dark and he fell to the ground. After Luo Guang analyzed the beast virus, he found that the virus in his body could not stop the Shinra virus at all, and his brain was easily invaded. "That's it," the clone sneered, and then went back to pick up the light machine gun that was thrown over there. The weapons of the Russians will not be unusable after falling. According to the plot of the CG movie, there are still 2 survivors. Arius has been controlled by the Shinra virus, so there is no need to keep the remaining 2. Soon, she found Gomez and his daughter. Father Diego was seriously injured and dying, and had already fainted. Not far away, his daughter Maria, who was wearing a bridesmaid dress, was not unconscious. It was just that a piece of metal was inserted into her back, and judging from the location, it should have hit the spine, and the lower body was probably paralyzed. She saw the clone standing beside her father with a gun in one hand, pointing the gun at her father's head. "No. Don't." Although she was still alive, Maria's condition was not very good. She spoke weakly and couldn't even crawl. The faint voice was caught by the clone. He looked over and then looked down at Diego at his feet. It was indeed not good to let his daughter see her beloved father being killed. So Luo Guang controlled the clone to aim the gun at Maria and shoot. Her father was unconscious and naturally couldn't see the scene, so he wouldn't be stimulated. In this way, Maria wouldn't be sad because she saw her father being killed. After dealing with Maria, the hard-hearted Luo Guang dealt with Diego, and then went to find Arius. The clone took a few steps and heard footsteps from the woods, and knew that the security personnel from the outer periphery came to support. The gunshots rang out again, and soon only Arius and the clone were left on the entire island. Luo Guang began to collect intelligence. He first asked Arius to tell him the location of all his biological and chemical weapons factories and research institutes. Perhaps because of hatred, and because the other party's willpower was not low, the control was not smooth this time. Arius did not break through the control, but today's events had a great impact on him, causing him to suddenly remember the current situation when he recalled the things Luo Guang asked. This caused Luo Guang to have to ask a question many times before getting a complete answer. He did not change the questioning strategy because he was too troublesome, and still asked the other party to tell the situation in detail. Arius was crying and told his clone about these places in a disjointed manner. "I look too much like a villain now," Luo Guang, who was far away in Africa, complained in his heart and wrote down the addresses and ways to enter one by one. He would tell O'Brien about these contents later and let him dispatch and assign them to various branches to carry out the strike mission. After understanding the situation of the biological and chemical weapons factory and the laboratory, the next thing was Arius's own business. Arias was not on the list of personnel of the Apocalypse organization. In terms of his combat effectiveness, he was just an A level with relatively strong recovery ability. And from his answer, the other party did not know about the Apocalypse organization. Luo Guang was not interested in the cooperation between Arias and Simmons. Because Simmons wanted to kill people and destroy the bridge after crossing the river, which proved that the cooperation between the two parties had ended, and asking could not change the established facts. So he then focused on asking about the virus in this guy's body. This question had an unexpected gain. The virus in Arias' body was given by a mysterious person, who once told him that this was the most suitable virus for him. He was cautious by nature, so he naturally wouldn't believe the other party's words. As a result, the mysterious man launched a sneak attack without hesitation and injected the virus into his body. From this situation, Luo Guang felt that the mysterious man was most likely a member of the Apocalypse organization. They were attracted by Arias's physical adaptability. Feeling the power surging from his body, Arias could only believe the mysterious man's words at this time. After that, the two sides adopted a new cooperation. The fourth-generation Plaka parasites and biological weapons sold by Arias to Eastern Slavia were actually the information and production lines given by the mysterious man. After that, in order to not be controlled by others in production technology, Arias secretly cooperated with Birykova to study biological weapons together. The production line that Parker and others saw in the underground factory was actually a replica developed by the two. 2 hours passed. During this time, Luo Guang changed the place to interrogate Arias to prevent Simmons from sending people to confirm the kill. After he took out everything in the other party's mind, he decisively self-destructed the Shinra virus in his body, and then turned the other party into minced meat before he woke up. In the end, the clone did not contact the submarine to leave. Instead, after dealing with the items on his body, he found a feng shui treasure land and turned into a pool of ordinary blood water with no research value. Meow, thank you for your votes and subscriptions. Evolution begins with Resident Evil. Author, Wei Tong Meow. Chapter 573. Although Luo Guang has been concerned about Arias's outcome and even controlled his clone to attend the wedding, he has not forgotten about Claire's capture. Although the protagonists are lucky, this world is not a game for Luo Guang, but reality. So he has been assisting in the investigation of Claire's disappearance for the past 3 days and has played a lot of roles. In fact, when Chris and other protagonists face various things, Luo Guang is not always there to help, and this time is not an exception. When he faces the Apocalypse organization in the future, he will definitely bring his clones with him, and he will not be able to take care of his friends anytime and anywhere. Now he has strong power in his hands, at least half of the X organization has fallen into his hands, so Luo Guang can directly assist them in other aspects, such as tracking and investigation. There are detectives running around in the world, and there are also armchair detectives, right? Back to Luo Guang's investigation of Claire's kidnapping case. Because Alex's fate was changed by him, the reason for kidnapping Claire cannot be calculated according to the situation in the game. But Luo Guang still speculated a possible reason from the game setting at the beginning, that is, revenge. Because Neil Fisher can be said to be a loyal believer of FBC Commander Morgan, and believes in his strategy to deal with biohazards. Although the dissolution of the FBC is more of Morgan's own problem. But Fisher, the giant of the Lighthouse State, certainly cannot take revenge, and the Greyhound organization has been lurking again after the Terra Grigia incident, and he has no way to start. So with his strength, the only organization that can find a way to take revenge is the BSAT organization. Luo Guang also thought of these and chose to start with Fisher. Investigating his resume and recent life trajectory did allow him to find a lot of clues. For example, this person used to be Morgan's subordinate, but after retiring, he did not follow Morgan, but joined Terra Cipher. After the FBC was disbanded and Morgan was placed under house arrest, This Fisher visited him many times. Although the FBI's surveillance of Morgan has never weakened, there will definitely be slackness under such a long period of surveillance. So even though Luo Guang didn't hear the two discussing any conspiracy from the FBI's wiretap recordings, he still didn't reduce his suspicion. Because the T-Night Abyss virus used in this attack was a virus developed by the FBC. Luo Guang speculated that the virus used in the Terra Zephyr attack might have come from Morgan's private virus sample. It was Morgan who secretly told Fisher when Fisher visited. The day after the incident, in fact, only 6 hours had passed, and Luo Guang sent all the above information to Parker and Chris. He was dealing with Jill and Ashley's front and back attacks while controlling his clone to sort out the information and send it over. On the other hand, Parker did not deliberately investigate Fisher's situation during this period, but contacted the local police to track down the special forces. The enemy acted quickly. Before the police and BSA arrived, they captured people and drove away from the underground parking lot in the chaos. Because of different national conditions, there are no surveillance cameras in the public areas of the city. The roadside shops have their own cameras, but their clarity is not high, and many of them only have a threatening effect and are of no help at all. So Parker has a lot of difficulties in tracking the enemy's escape route. This road is not feasible, so he takes another road from the outbreak point of the biochemical crisis as the starting point of the investigation. The security of Terra Zephyr headquarters is very strict. Except for the toilets and the offices of the upper-level personnel, other places are equipped with surveillance, so Parker can quickly confirm how the enemy escaped. Naturally, he can also easily confirm the outbreak point of the biochemical crisis. From the surveillance video, the outbreak was very sudden, and there was no sign. The staff of Terra Zephyr suddenly mutated into zombies. The European branch of BSA tracked the movement of these people for a whole day and found that they were in 4 different departments. They had one thing in common, that is, they had used the water dispenser of their own department. Parker randomly checked a few people from the survivors for questioning, and they said that they did not use the department's water dispenser today. He did not let go of this suspicion and directly asked someone to test the water in the water dispenser at Terra Zephyr headquarters, and successfully detected the presence of the T-Night Abyss virus. Parker followed the clues and after using surveillance to confirm the situation of changing the bottled water and whether anyone had poisoned it, he locked his target on Neil Fisher. Now that BSA has evidence to arrest Fisher, combined with the information Luo Guang sent him early in the morning, he felt that as long as he found the suspect, he could find Claire. However, just when Parker wanted to call Chris, he found that he could not contact the other party. After rushing to Europe, Chris immediately threw himself into the investigation. Although he was anxious, he also knew that without clues and intelligence assistance, he could not do anything, so he kept checking the surveillance to find evidence. Parker couldn't find Chris on the phone, so he went to the monitoring room to ask about the situation in person, but he didn't see Chris, but only found Pierce, who looked anxious. Pierce was worried about Chris, and he was anxious because he was waiting for Parker. When he saw the other party come in, he immediately explained the situation. Chris left after receiving a phone call and did not tell anyone, including himself, about his destination. He was in such a hurry to leave because the kidnappers gave him a very tight deadline. It was obvious that the kidnappers knew his location and calculated the time to reach the destination. He thought that the location given by the kidnappers might not be where Claire was. In addition, there were quite a few kidnappers, so there must be enemy spies outside the sub-base. There might even be enemy undercovers in the base, so he couldn't instruct Pierce to find Parker immediately after he left. He could only let the other party come to find the problem, or wait too long and Pierce would go to Parker instead. That's why Pierce told Parker the captain's order anxiously. The kidnappers contacted, "Go find Luo Guang." Chris thought of various situations in just a dozen seconds and made a judgment immediately. The only thing he told was directly written down by Pierce and told Parker. When Luo Guang heard the news from Parker, he immediately understood what Chris meant and asked Hong Huang to locate Chris's work phone. Chris asked Parker to find him because he knew this. And his sister Claire was frugal and had only one mobile phone from beginning to end. There were many members of Terra Sephir, so it was naturally impossible for everyone to have a work phone. Therefore, considering the privacy issue, Claire's phone did not have any positioning device installed. 6 hours after Chris lost contact, that is, on the day of Aria's fake wedding, Jill received a call from the kidnapper. Facing the same rhetoric and the same threat, Jill did not panic, but argued with reason. She said that she was in Africa and did not have a private plane, so even if she took a regular flight, it would take a lot of time, and she could not go to the designated location within the time required by the kidnapper. The kidnapper did not expect the other party to say this, and was immediately speechless. But he naturally would not agree to change the time. After listening to Chris and Claire's voices and asking Jill to ensure that the two were alive, he hung up the phone directly. Jill, who put down the phone, did not listen to the other party's threats, and turned around to tell Luo Guang the content of the call. She and Chris were both police officers, so they naturally knew that the so-called threats were not guaranteed at all, and they would not easily believe the other party's promises. If the other party chose to change the time and give her more time to go, Jill might choose to infiltrate the enemy. With her ability, handcuffs and ropes could not lock her up. As long as she can confirm that Chris and the other two are safe, she will have the confidence to eliminate the enemy by herself. Of course, Luo Guang will definitely not let his woman take risks. There are only 2 hours left before the kidnappers ask Jill to arrive at the designated location. After Claire disappeared, apart from Chris, the most anxious person was not Jill, Luo Guang and others, but Steve, a BSA soldier who has become independent. Not long after the Chinese New Year, Steve became the captain of the second team and assisted Chris in dealing with biochemical crisis incidents. When Chris was on business trips and took Pierce to exercise, it was Steve who worked hard and was responsible for the anti-biochemical battle of the branch. Steve did not think there was anything wrong with Chris's practice of training Pierce as his successor. He did not think that he was the first disciple under Chris and that he should be in charge of the BSA North American branch. Because he was self-aware and knew that he was not that kind of material and did not have the ability to lead the entire branch. Steve did not know the reason why Chris took Pierce away from North America at first, and it was Luo Guang who informed him in the end. Luo Guang did this because he thought the other party should know about this. Although Steve seemed to have given up pursuing Claire on the surface, he knew that as long as Claire didn't get married, Steve would not really give up. Now Steve has become mature, completely shed his previous impetuosity, and led his men to rush over. They walked out of the city airport where Chris's mobile phone was located and got on the car arranged by Luo Guang. This time we are not only facing zombies, but also humans. At the same time, this is not an annihilation war, but a hostage rescue mission. Steve put on a bulletproof vest and told the three men about the situation. He continued, "This is not a BSA mission, but I am here to save my beloved woman, so you still have the last chance to withdraw." At first, they just planned to come here to help investigate the kidnappers. Steve took the private plane rented by Luo Guang to Europe. On the way here, he received the latest news and accepted Luo Guang's advice, and then flew directly to the city. Because the situation and the content of the mission have changed, the danger is greater, so he deliberately asked again. One of them smiled and said, "Okay, Captain. We all flew here and got in the car. Are you planning to come here for a public-funded tour?" "That's right. The captain's business is my business. I won't just stand by and watch." A subordinate who was saved by Steve also followed. The last person nodded silently and said, "Anyway, we are following you." "Captain, don't try." Steve didn't smile, but said solemnly, "Thank you." The vehicle soon arrived at the other side of the woods outside an abandoned factory and stopped on the side of the road with the double flashes on. Steve held the silent assault rifle in his hand and confirmed, "Check the equipment. The mission has begun." Luo Guang had prepared everything. In addition to the factory's architectural drawings and real-time satellite monitoring, there are also various weapons and equipment. For example, the two silent assault rifles in the team are not easy to find in Europe. He successfully obtained them after asking two organizations. After they got off the car, they immediately hid in the woods and came to the vicinity of the factory cautiously. There are many enemies in the abandoned factory, and they are the special forces responsible for kidnapping Claire. They are not standing guard outside the factory or patrolling in a team like in games or movies, but lurking in various places, using secret guards to form a factory alert network. The problem now is that secret operations are not simple. As long as the enemy is alarmed, Claire and Chris's lives will be in danger. One of them took out a drone with various equipment such as thermal imaging. After taking off, he confirmed the location of the enemy's secret guard under the cover of night, and soon found a way to enter the factory secretly. But this road is not easy to walk. You need to hang upside down under the industrial pipes used for transportation to climb to the vicinity of the factory, and then climb through the window to enter the second floor. Steve had no choice but to take on this mission. He decided to enter the factory to find Claire and Chris first, and then the two sides would work together to eliminate other enemies. The three men also knew that the captain's decision could not be changed, so they agreed. Another person also started a drone, which was not a monitoring device, but a fully automatic bomber. However, it was not a bomb, but a small stone, which was specially used to attract the enemy's attention. Of course, when necessary, this bomber can also replace the stone with a grenade. Needless to say, this was also Luo Guang's advance preparation based on the situation of the factory. Steve only brought the necessary weapons and equipment, and did not carry a backpack, and carefully moved towards the factory. The moment the sentry on the right was attracted by the sound of the stone hitting the ground, he immediately ran and climbed over the wall in a second to enter the factory. As soon as he landed, he immediately hid behind a utility room to the left. This is the blind spot of the sentries on the left and right, but the utility room is also where their sight lines intersect, so he directly climbed up the eaves with both hands, turned over and came to the roof of the utility room, and crawled forward for a distance after lying on the roof. In the direction he was facing, that is, there was actually an enemy sentry in the factory, but that person was not at his post at this time. After confirming the location of the nearly half-meter thick industrial pipe and the shelters along the way, Steve said, "I'm ready." Received. The enemy facing is still hiding behind the wall. After saying that, the team member who controlled the decoy drone flew the drone to the opposite direction of the enemy sentry on the left and threw a stone. The one on the right had been alarmed once, so this time he chose the one on the left. Steve completely trusted his teammates and jumped down immediately. He used the cover from the left to block the observation range of the sentry on the right, rushed to the location of the industrial pipe, and then hung upside down on it and kept crawling forward. This action is not easy. He can only hold the industrial pipe with the strength of his limbs. But he is Chris's apprentice. Although his strength is not as good as his master, it is enough to support him to the outer wall of the factory. The industrial pipe is directly extended from the factory. There is a window on the upper right, which is the room where the hiding enemy is. The enemy reappeared in front of the window to observe, but at that time Steve was very close to the factory and under the industrial pipe, so he did not find any intruders. Steve climbed to the top of the industrial pipe carefully. He was squatting with only a wall between him and the enemy. Countdown, 3, 2, 1, fire. The only subordinate who did not need to control the drone pulled the trigger of the VSS sniper rifle with a PSO-1 optical sight. Steve heard the sound of someone falling to the ground at the window, and immediately stood up and jumped, flipped directly in, and then took the dagger and stabbed the fallen enemy. There was no time to think. After finishing the knife, he did not even pull out the dagger, and directly picked up the assault rifle. Fortunately, there was only one enemy in the room. Steve glanced at the cigarette butts on the floor next to the body, and he understood why the enemy had hidden and opened the sliding window before. "I'm going inside," he told the people outside, and picked up the enemy's intercom. Although the factory was not small, Luo Guang's positioning was very accurate and he could easily confirm the location of the phone. But whether he could find Chris and the others before being discovered was still up to fate. Steve had done his best to get close to the hostages. However, just as Steve was about to leave the room and go to the place where the phone was, a voice came from the enemy's intercom. "The hostage escaped. Go to the cleaning room on the second floor." Steve's eyes lit up, and after telling his teammates outside the situation, he immediately shot out. Meow, the previous chapter missed the Greyhound organization.